everybody. Today we're debating the causes of Russia's war on Ukraine, and we're starting right now with Adam in Destiny's opening statement. Thanks so much for being with us. The floor is all yours.
So I suppose I will start. I'm going to keep this short. First off, I'm glad that Jackson and Haas finally collected their courage to actually face us in a debate. Last time they pitched out. Oh well. Second time the charm. I'm glad they're here. So with regards to the reasons for Russia's invasion for a war, I wish they could. I wish they took the first opportunity to debate us, because back then they could have mounted a better case. Now that Russia's offensive is faltering in the east, especially in Severodonetsk, if you got up with the news, it's not looking good for the Russians. They got entrapped. Now they're being treated to hell in brutal urban fighting. So that really does not bode well for Russia, and consequently for tankies who are pro-Russian. They cannot make such a good case for Russian involvement in Ukraine, the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And of course, regardless of what these two might try to tell you, the reasons are still just good old-fashioned Russian imperialism. This is what they've always done. This is the bread and butter of the Russian Empire, also the Soviet Union. Because if you look at Russia, like the reason why Russia is so big is because they did the exact same thing they're trying to do currently to Ukraine, as in to invade, destroy, murder, deport, subjugate people who live there, and forcibly melt them into their empire. Same thing they did in Ukraine, or at least they tried, but oops, Ukraine actually resisted, and the Russian army is not so strong as it was due to endemic corruption and demographic issues. So now Russia is on the sort of wrong end of the stick, so to speak, and this might not be an ideal situation for a tanky, but we'll see how they'll try to justify it. Anyway, Destiny?
Yeah, I mean, the arguments have remained virtually unchanged since the beginning of the war. Russia doesn't really have any good reason to go after Ukraine. Russia has continued to threaten Ukraine's sovereignty in a way that we haven't seen any nation threaten the sovereignty of any other nation in the past 30 years. The idea that the territorial integrity of another country could be threatened by a larger power because of fears of the type of government they'll have, or the potential voluntary joining of NATO, or the potential voluntary joining of open markets in Europe, is just as ridiculous now as it was a few months ago when the war began. We've seen Russia commit to atrocious military strategy, whether we're talking about civilians being murdered in places like Mariupol, or whether we're talking about the, I guess, just the overall mayhem or destruction that they brought in cities that they've been forced to retreat from now. There's any justification that could revolve around trying to say that Russia should be able to do anything undermines Ukraine's sovereignty. That hasn't changed since the beginning of the war. And unfortunately, now Russia finds itself in the bad end of a protracted war that it doesn't seem to be able to support. And yeah, I'm curious to see if we have any new arguments that could possibly justify the failing Russian invasion into Ukraine.
Oh, yeah.
You got it. Thank you very much. We'll kick it over to Jackson and Infrared, but want to say, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we're a neutral channel hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. We hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you are from, and we have many more juicy upcoming debates. A controversial one next week, Vosh and Dr. Bogardus debating whether or not trans women are women. You don't want to miss it, as well as many other debates. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss it. And with that, thanks so much, Jackson and Infrared. The floor is all yours for your openings as well.
All right. Well, first of all, very happy that AdamSomething and Destiny have joined us for a debate today, because last time they bitched out and refused to debate us. And I feel like they probably collected their ideas and their views by now. So it's good that they're here. Before we get into it, though, and I hope AdamSomething can respond to this, you've gone out and you've posted memes of Stefan Bandera, the infamous Nazi in Ukraine. You've been criticized by your own audience for doing this. You said that you defended the Azov battalion because what else is Ukraine supposed to do than to support the Azov Nazis and bring them into their National Guard ranks and allow them to basically slaughter and genocide people in the Donbass for 8 years. So hopefully you can address your support for the Azov Nazis and posting Bandera memes online. But as we get into this, I mean, obviously, the war, this special military operation, invasion, whatever party wants to call it, began due to Western escalation. We saw the continued threat of NATO accession of Ukraine leading up well into the Zelensky administration, even up until the last days prior to this invasion beginning. We saw the West and nations that previously were neutral flooding Ukraine with arms. We've seen over the past 6 years, we've seen NATO training Ukrainian battalions. We've seen the U.S. training special op Ukrainian forces in the United States. And we also saw that the Ukrainians were planning an offensive, an invasion into the Donbass. We know for the past 8 years, Putin has tried to secure peace in Ukraine through the Minsk Accords and the Minsk II Accords, both of which were violated by Ukrainian forces. The ceasefire violations were violated, especially in the days leading up to the war. We saw an dramatic increase in ceasefire violations. And though the OSCE does not directly point out who is responsible for these violations, Donetsk officials say that Ukraine was responsible for the vast majority of these violations in the final days of the war. But then again, this isn't nearly as important as the fact that there were documents released, I believe it was on March 8th, which pointed out that Ukraine's National Guard, the 4th Operational Brigade, was planning an invasion into the Joint Forces Operation Zone in the Donbass. They were going to do a full-scale invasion. And in an effort to prevent NATO accession on Russia's border, in an effort to prevent the slaughter of more Ukrainian or more Donbass civilians in Donetsk and Lugansk with this threat of an invasion, and to prevent the Nazis like the Azovs that you, AdamSomething, have defended from killing more civilians and spreading their ideology, Russia decided to make a counter move to the 8-year war, which was started after a U.S. coup in 2014 in Ukraine by launching this special military operation.
Additionally, in regards to this allegation by AdamSomething that we had backed out of our debate, if anyone's interested, we don't actually have to argue about it. You can go on my channel where I provide irrefutable proof that at the very least, AdamSomething was lying that me and Jackson refused to debate him. There's I show the full DMs with Modern Day Debate, and I provide evidence from Modern Day Debate's Twitter that says it was actually him that backed out of that. But, let's not dwell too much on that. Just to add to what Jackson said with the kind of broader picture, this notion that what we're witnessing is this time-old Russian imperialism, the notion that the Soviet Union was imperialist is already questionable, but the Soviet Union doesn't even exist anymore. Although Russia has inherited the Soviet Union as a state, there can be no question of Russian imperialism without an international system of equal sovereign nations. Now, the international system that has resulted from the architects of the Bretton Woods system after World War II, I don't even think the two gentlemen here will try and make the argument that that system has resulted in free and equal sovereignty between nations. Clearly, the United States has an exceptional status in that international system. And it had sought, after the fall of the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc, to integrate not only the former countries of the Warsaw Pact, but also the former Soviet Union into that international system. And it has been Russia's resistance to being integrated into that international system that has resulted in the Western aggression that led up to the events in Ukraine today. So I think I'll just leave it there for now.
You got it. We'll jump into open conversation. Want to let you know, folks, 100% of today's Super Chats are going to go to the Domestic Violence Action Center. So this is an organization with a great charity watchdog rating, saying that they are indeed using the funds for what they say they are, which is helping abuse, or I should say, people who have been abused or people who are coming out of domestic violence situations. And so highly encourage you, hey, send in a super chat, as you can both ask a question for the Q&A, and it's going to a good cause, 100% of it. So with that, thanks very much. Gentlemen, the floor is all yours for open conversation. I want to remind you, if it gets too unyieldy, if it gets too wild, I do have to mute you. And here we go. 3, 2, 1, go.
Just a quick point as we start. I have this email in front of me that I got from James on the 2nd of March. This is with regards to who pitched out of the debate. He wrote, "Hi Adam, I'm bummed that Jackson, Hinkle, and Infrared aren't going for it despite my best efforts to persuade them. However, I'm not exaggerating when I say I might have a better idea. Russian fellow named Justice, yada yada." And then we got the Justice debate. So here, James on the 2nd of March wrote to me that Hinkle and Infrared aren't going for it despite him trying to convince them otherwise. You can ask James about it after the debate if you want. This email, I got this from the Modern Day Debate. So this is the only way to interpret this, is that you guys have backed out. This is on my Discord and also on my YouTube community page if you scroll down. So feel free to check it out for yourself. Otherwise, like I can see that this debate is going to be pretty much like you throwing out a bunch of essentially disinfo and misrepresentation, etc. And just like bad faith, Gish Gallop gaslighting, the usual. Like, that's Jackson's MO mostly. Infrared just like screams a lot. But
were you not posting photos of Stefan Bandera?
Yes, which was actually a spin on this Russian sort of hysteria about Stefan Bandera. If you know European history, you know that yes. I know it's funny. It's funny to it's only funny because you're a bit ignorant on this.
Well, your own audience called you out about that. That's just why I brought it up.
Some people found it weird, which I fully understand. But I think the thing to understand here is that. That image I interpreted as essentially a play on this Russian aversion to Stepan Bandera, like, ooh, look at the Bandera, like that kind of thing. The second thing,
I don't really. And in fact, you said that Bandera and you said Azov were far right. Would you be willing to say here live that they are not just far right, but they're Nazis? Can we get that on the record?
Some of them are definitely Nazis.
Well, hold on. To be clear, on the record right now, the Azov battalion is not the same Azov battalion that it was like pre-2014. The Azov battalion has been properly assumed in the Ukrainian forces. And the idea that the majority of these people, or even a sizable chunk of them, are far right or Nazis doesn't seem to be true. We can point to like pictures
you don't
online.
Think that the SS...
Can I finish my sentence?
Destiny. You don't think that the
Hinkle,
SS...
Do you have any source on that, actually?
You don't
think
that
do you have some numbers, like what percentage of them are Nazis?
Let's chill. Hold on. Let's all chill.
You don't think that the SS Wolfsengel symbol on their actual uniforms is a symbol of their ideology, that they are Nazis, or the Black Sun logo that is a Nazi symbol?
Yep. Okay. So my response to this is that when I'm trying to figure out what's happening in terms of foreign affairs, I'm not looking at pictures that people post on Facebook and Twitter. If we're going to say that there is a... Yeah, that's right. So if we're going to say like there is a significant Nazi or far right ultranationalist problem in Ukraine, what I'd be interested in is that like, are there an elevation of the amount of attacks on people like anti-Semitically? Do we have like Kristallnacht going on? Do we have people that are encouraging a lot of anti-Semitic or hateful behavior towards Jewish people in Ukraine?
We do.
I don't see that anywhere. There aren't really widespread reports of that. Polling data in Ukraine shows that like they're not anti-Semitic, in arguably the least anti-Semitic country I think in all of Europe. I don't even think it's Eastern Europe. So yeah, I'm not really as convinced about pictures of people with dumb fucking symbols and shit on their military uniforms. I'm sure there are probably some Nazis in the Ukrainian military.
Well, I mean, it's their official symbol.
Let me just finish.
It's their official symbol. You're making it seem like a smaller thing.
Steven 20 seconds to finish, and then we'll come over.
I'm sure there are far right aspects to literally every single military in the world. But if you cared as much about this, why don't you ever talk about like the Wagner Group? Why don't you ever talk about any of the far right elements that exist in Russia that literally train foreign fighters that like do operations for far right causes in other countries, like in Sweden?
The Wagner Group doesn't have any official ties to the Russian government, but regardless, I just wanted to ask, are you trying to suggest that it's not possible for there to be neo-Nazis, active neo-Nazis, I should add, if there aren't anti-Jewish pogroms going on? Because I'll have you know that the biggest victims of Nazi violence during World War II were Slavs, and Russian Slavs in particular. So I'm not sure where this idea that Nazis have to engage in anti-Semitic violence. I mean, it's clear they do have anti-Semitic views. That's well documented, but I don't see why that has to be a key criteria. Now, regarding the Wagner Group, even if you want to say that the Russian government has these under the cover ties, I mean, that is vastly different than integrating literal neo-Nazi groups into your official military, as Ukraine has done for their National Guard. So I don't really see the comparison. I mean, you could say that Russia's doing some under the rug shady shit if you're going to try an argument. There's no evidence of that. But even if that was true, it wouldn't be the same as the way in which Ukraine has literally integrated these people into its official military.
Yeah, so I mean, the difference is that like the Wagner Group still operates as the arm, as the paramilitary arm of the Russian military.
That's the key word, though, paramilitary.
What is state sanctioned, state supported, state.
What does that mean to you? What do you mean?
They're a private mercenary group.
They're private mercenaries that work at the behest of the Kremlin. They are directly.
Where's your evidence of that?
Wait, are we having this debate? Wait, is that the debate we're having right now? That the Wagner Group is just some independent operating thing that doesn't have any ties to Russia? Is that where we're at?
Well, you're trying to make a comparison to a. And by the way, we all know it's not just the Azov battalion. Of course, Azov is probably the most given the most spectacle and attention because they are so out in the open with regard to the fact that they do have these Nazi symbols as their official logos. But I mean, you look at all these other groups, you look at Trident, you look at is it the C-14, you look at all these groups that are responsible for these mass atrocities. And they are the ideological inheritors of Stefan Bandera, who, again, AdamSomething here seems to think is a guy worth making memes about and posting about on his YouTube page. But what I will say is that at the end of the day, the people who started these groups, started these parties, started this mass political movement in Ukraine to carry out the ideological ambitions of Nazi collaborators like Stefan Bandera, they say things like, quote, we want to rid non-Ukrainians out of Ukraine. We want to get Russians and Jews out of Ukraine. That was Olya Tanyabuk. We saw Andriy Belitsky, rather. He was the commander of the Azov battalion and still is. He said that he wanted to profess his support. Listen, he wanted to profess his support for a crusade of white nations against Semitic-led subhumans. So when they're killing 14,000 people in the Donbass, do you not think that that is the true actions of Nazis? That is them carrying out their ideological ambitions?
No, it's a civil war within the country. You don't see them like
against ethnic Russians.
Against people that are being supported by Russia, breaking away from their country.
Why are they being supported by Russia?
Because Russia is trying to undermine the sovereignty of Ukraine, and they've been trying to do so ever since 2014 when their guy got ousted from the government.
From Russia's part, it's simple blood and soil, essentially. And
so I'd like to ask...
Has 1 sec, please.
Okay,
quick question for you. We keep hearing about this. We keep hearing about this massive Nazi problem in Ukraine, right? Like, of course, citation needed, but also, guys, don't you find it funny how like your position is held by virtually every neo-Nazi movement in Europe right now? Like in Hungary, there's a literal Nazi party in parliament right now. Our homeland is called, who are just spreading the same kind of propaganda that you do. They say the exact same thing. Fidesz, Viktor Orban's party, who's essentially a proto-fascist party, also believes the same thing. And every single far-right party in Europe, every single Nazi
party in Europe,
is
Orban's party right now genociding ethnic Russians?
Excuse me? Like
there is no genocide in Ukraine. What are we talking about?
Well, I just wanted to, first of all...
Russia is genociding more ethnic Russians right now than anyone else.
Adam, I think you're wrong.
That's factually incorrect.
So
yeah,
Adam,
they're bombing ethnic Russian areas.
So,
ethnic Russian casualties are mounting in it. Well, 1 sec, and ethnic Russian civilian casualties are mounting in the areas that Russia is attacking because Russia.
So you think that none of those ethnic Russian deaths could have been responsible by the Ukrainian forces like they were over the past 8 years.
So now we switch to like, don't you think some of them might have been killed by Ukraine? Come on, dude. Look, if
you answer the question. I asked you a question. You're making it out to be that all ethnic Russians killed are a result of Russian airstrikes or something like that.
Of course, not 100%.
Okay, well, good. Now we can find a point of agreement. Now, do you think that there are more ethnic Russians? Do you think that there are more ethnic Russians that are killed right now compared to the past 8 years?
Most ethnic Russians in Ukraine are anti-Russian or anti-Russian military and anti-invasion.
Before we get into that,
how does that happen?
You said the majority of neo-Nazis are pro-Russia, which isn't true. It's just that the majority
in Europe, absolutely. Absolutely
not true.
Look at their policies.
White nationalists.
The AfD in Germany, Alternative for Deutschland, Germany.
They're not neo-Nazis. The AfD are not neo-Nazis. They're right-wing populists. And that's not the same thing.
Right-wing populists. That's
not the same thing. Almost all populists are pro-Russia.
I live in East Germany right now.
You'd probably call Trump a Nazi too.
Yeah. But anyway,
Trump is not a Nazi. He's just like a.
But I wanted to ask you the question.
I think Marjorie Taylor Greene and Boebert and people like that. I think they're like kind of proto Nazis. Like, well, I mean, what I'm saying is they would not.
I'm interested in your notion of Nazism when you consider Stepan Bandera not a Nazi but conservative.
No, Stepan Bandera had a complicated history. He was a Nazi collaborator, but
he wasn't a Nazi.
I don't think he was like an avowed Nazi. Although
do you know what he said about Jews?
Oh, sure. But here's the thing.
So paleo-conservatives in America are not.
Wait, hold on. Are you going to let him finish the thing, or are you just going to keep like rapid fire questions?
Sure.
What the fuck?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So
I would just love to know how.
So back during the day.
I do want to let him finish.
So about Bandera, So about Bandera, I think it's very important to note the historical context back in the day. At that point, the Soviet Union was doing something similar to Ukraine that it's doing now. And at that point, the Germans, the Nazis came through from the West. And the Ukrainians, of course, were resisting the Soviet invasion. And the Nazis were like, hey, guys, we kind of hate the Russians too. Like, do you want to like team up or something? And Ukraine was like, yeah, cool. And so, of course, and they were anti-Semitic. Of course,
that's a separate historical debate that we can't get into.
Yeah, but I have to explain this to you because none of you seem to understand this. Okay, so back then, they were of course anti-Semitic, and there was like a whole bunch of genocides in Western Ukraine, mostly of Poles and Jews. There was like scorched earth, just like murdering. In Europe, generally, like the more east you go, the more brutal these pogroms and purges get. But the thing is, though, unfortunately, this has been the norm for hundreds of years in Europe of groups genociding other groups, and anti-Semitism has been like a constant theme. So Stepan Bandera, as horrible he was, and of course the level of violence was higher since it was far out in the east. Unfortunately, from a European perspective, that was not that special, right? And then later on, Bandera himself got like imprisoned by Nazis and removed from power, etc.
Wait,
it's complicated.
Hold on, but this is an outright falsification of history. The idea okay, well, you're going to let me talk now because I let you do that. But the idea that Bandera, as pogroms and which was actually part of the Holocaust, if you don't know, the anti-Jewish violence in Ukraine perpetrated by the Banderas is just another incident of anti-Semitic violence in the history of Europe. That would be true if it wasn't for the fact that the Ukrainian nationalist ideology, even before the Nazi invasion, was heavily drawing from the inspiration of German fascism and Nazism, as were most of the other extreme ultra-nationalists across Europe at the time who had an anti-Soviet agenda. So what you're saying is a falsification of history. Bandera's anti-Semitism was of a Hitlerite character. It was not some traditional conservative European anti-Semitism. And I just find it hilarious that you're doing all this mental gymnastics to try and tell us that a literal person who helped perpetrate the Holocaust alongside of the Nazis is not a Nazi, is just a collaborator, but American paleo-conservatives are somehow Nazis. I mean, that's quite the stretch. But I wanted to ask you...
Could I just ask a quick question about that, and then you can finish everything? I'm just curious. Would you consider the USSR a Nazi country?
Absolutely not, no.
So when the USSR is literally writing up agreements to split Poland in half and join invade it, and having non-aggression pacts and setting like the stage for like future alliances with Nazi Germany, how do you rationalize that in your mind? I'm so curious.
Yeah, it's very clear. The Soviet Union made several overtures to France and Britain and the other Western allied countries to form a security pact against the Germans. When the Germans kept going east to Czechia, they had their intention to go east to Poland. The Soviets were left with no choice but to continue to buy time because they were not prepared for a military confrontation with the Nazis.
So left with no choice, like Bandera was in Ukraine, in order to like fend off
Soviet.
Bandera was the same thing.
The
same shit.
Fault in the narrative.
Bandera was definitely left with the choice to not actually collaborate with the Nazis in the Holocaust. Yeah, he was definitely.
And the USSR had to?
The USSR most definitely had to have a non-aggression pact in order to buy up the necessary time to build up its military and industrialize.
It wasn't just a non-aggression pact. They invaded Poland with Germany. They split that country in half.
No, Germany had told the USSR of its intention to invade Poland. And then the USSR said, okay, we won't go to war with you over this if you don't cross this line. Now, when the Polish government fled Poland in exile to London, the Soviets came to the Eastern Poland to defend the Soviet Union. That is why at the time, the Polish government and the British government did not accuse the Soviet Union of invading Poland, and they didn't go to war with the Soviet Union, and that they went to war with Germany. And there's a reason for that, because the Soviet Union did not invade Poland. The whole pretext of World War II was the invasion of Poland by Germany. Why didn't Britain declare war on the Soviet Union?
Did the Polish government flee before or after the USSR invaded, Haz?
Oh, yeah.
It was in response to the German invasion.
Did the Polish government flee before or after the USSR invaded?
At the same time.
Okay.
By the way, Haz,
do you know
why would they flee if they're not at war? Shouldn't they be like chill? Like,
well, then why didn't the Allies declare war on the Soviet Union if the Soviet Union was invading Poland?
I'm not asking why I'm just curious how it's just interesting to me that the USSR was basically forming like a long-term alliance, or had in the works a long-term alliance with Nazi Germany. But you got like a rationalization for that. But Bandera is like literally evidence of like permanent future Nazism.
In Molotov's meetings with the German leaders, he explicitly rejected any long-term alliance and new order for Europe. He said, we don't want to form a new order, a new world order with you guys. We just want our security concerns to be respected. Don't cross this line in Poland. Don't go to Bulgaria. Don't go here. Mm-hmm. And then it was totally, meant to just defend the Soviet Union not to create this long-term alliance for the
and the USSR. Hold on, just another. I'm sorry,
yes,
because there was the massacre, the Katyn massacre, or whatever, where the USSR is executing like tens of thousands of fucking Polish military officers and intelligentsia. Yes. You had the what was the name of the KPD officials, the communists that fled Germany into the USSR, were shipped right back to Germany to be executed. What do you mean they were just like not aggressive, dude?
To the historian Grover Furr, who's done a lot of work to show this.
I don't have him to talk to right now. I just have you, Haas, to talk to.
Well,
do you think neither of those things happened?
We don't have time to go through the primary sources and evidence for all of those claims, so I'm just going to tell you that I deny them.
Yeah, like Destiny, you probably think there's a genocide. You probably think there's a genocide in Xinjiang right now too. So you're not the most reliable source in the world. But what I want to point out here is that you're making an argument about the Soviet Union protecting their security and whatnot. We saw Stefan Bandera literally work together with Nazi intelligence to form massive SS battalions in Ukraine to band together tens of thousands of Ukrainians to slaughter hundreds of thousands.
Hold on, the SS isn't bad either. That's just paramilitary.
And you're trying to compare the two, and it's literally insane. You're trying to equate a security pact with literal Nazi genocide of Ukrainians. It's insane.
But SS is just paramilitary. That's not bad.
You're actually fucking insane.
Do you have any proof that the SS was like controlled by the German government? It's just like a paramilitary.
Say that again.
Do you have any proof that like the SS was directly controlled by Hitler?
There's not a single record of Hitler actually ordering the murder of any Jewish people.
It was the paramilitary wing.
Like, did I say Hitler? Did I say with?
I'm just saying when you're talking about the SS, these are paramilitaries, and if the Wagner Group doesn't count, I don't know why the SS would count.
Did I say it was Nazi intelligence? Because we do have evidence that he was meeting with Nazi intelligence officials to form these battalions.
Oh, the flaws in the narrative. I like it. By the way,
that's exactly what I said. You tried to manipulate my words.
Sure.
Listen, at the end of the day, I do agree with you though. I do agree with you though.
Hold on,
something.
Jackson,
I do agree with you. I do agree with you.
I want to go from Adam to and then infrared after.
So I want to correct you on something. It wasn't the invasion of Poland. It was the special military operation into Poland. Okay, let's keep it straight, guys. Okay.
Yeah, that's an argument devoid of substance. It is very
nice.
It was very clear that the invasion of Poland started World War II. And the Soviet Union was not considered a member of the Axis powers at that time, and Britain did not declare war on the Soviet Union. Nor did
despite
the
Soviet efforts to become part of the Axis.
Nor did the Polish government in exile blame the Soviet Union for any invasion. Now, second of all, I wanted to ask you this question about a more contemporary event. You wanted to know about these acts of neo-Nazi violence that were, as Destiny put it, just part of the war. Was the Odessa massacre just part of the war?
The Odessa massacre was an incident where a pro-Russian mob met a pro-Ukrainian mob, and the pro-Ukrainian mob turned out to be about 3 times larger than the pro-Russian mob, and they actually pushed the pro-Russians into this building. I don't know, trade unions has something like that, and they pushed them into this building. Yeah. And it's blurry what happened next, but Molotovs and stones started flying.
It's not blurry. The International Criminal Court has already done a preliminary examination on this.
Feel free. The building got fired.
I was going to say real quick, international courts have also ruled there's not a genocide happening in the Donbass. So you can't pick and choose when you want to side with international courts. Sorry, Adam, keep going.
Oh yeah, sure. So at that point, it was like most people died, I think, of the stampede and the smoke because the building was actually set on fire. And then afterwards, that was pretty much the end of the pro-Russian protest in Odessa. Actually, a few months later, there was like a sort of terror bombing of the Ukrainian authorities, of civilians. A couple of them died, but that was pretty much it at the end. The next calamity came when Russia started launching cruise missiles at residential neighborhoods, as in now. But that was basically the gist of the Odessa massacre, which wasn't really a massacre. It was two mobs meeting with stones and Molotovs and whatnot.
So, yeah, I mean,
as during the Civil War,
that's a great attempt to whitewash a horrific act of neo-Nazi.
I know. I mean, this is what happened.
But we have countless other. Hold on, but we have other countless instances of violence at the time. There was the crucifixion of Russians. There was the disappearance of several...
That's a fake, though. That the crucifixion didn't really happen, though.
Well, I saw it on video, so I don't know how it could be fake. And there's the several Russian journalists who, I don't know, just disappeared somehow. I mean, there was a clear campaign of intimidation, terror, and violence.
Like now in Russia, right?
Russian forces.
Like now when anti-war journalists are being disappeared and news organizations being shuttered in.
Well,
Russia,
we're talking about Ukraine right now. We're not talking about Russia right now, and that's kind of like a whataboutism. The point is that there's a campaign of terror, intimidation, and violence against people who represent the opinion of the Russian-speaking population in East Ukraine. You said earlier that the Russian-speaking population in Ukraine is anti-Russian. Well, how would you even know that if their representatives were the victims of a systemic campaign of terrorism and violence and intimidation?
Like who?
Like the various Russian journalists. I can't name them
Like
off
who?
the top of my head.
Oh,
Wait,
okay,
what's a single, like we hear when journalists are killed during these conflicts, it's a really big deal. We hear about it in Israel. It happened recently. The IDF murdered or killed a journalist during, they say it was accidental fire or whatever. Are you, just so I can understand, are you implying that like Ukraine is murdering a bunch of Russian journalists, but we just haven't heard about it at all?
Well, there are several missing journalists.
Can you answer that question instead of like...
They were literally
please.
shelling Russian journalists in Donetsk this week.
Oh, actually, Russians actually killed, I think, a Reuters journalist or a French journalist. He died of like artillery shrapnel. And they also.
What's your evidence that the French journalist was killed by Russians? Because he was actually in Donetsk. And French President Emmanuel Macron didn't even say that he was killed by Russians. So he left it vague. What's your evidence, since you know more
on
than
the Ukrainian
Macron?
side, though. Like, unless Ukrainians shelled their own positions, then sure.
Shelling their own positions.
Feel free to look it up. Sure,
they have positions in Donetsk, in the city center of Donetsk.
Most of it didn't happen in the city.
Listen,
it didn't happen in the city center. It didn't happen in the city center. Look it up.
Adam, you made the claim that it was just a bunch of random people that stormed the Odessa Trade Union House on that May 2nd when they slaughtered dozens and dozens of people. You leave out the part that it was Andriy Paruby who was in Odessa meeting with many of the individuals who were responsible for the violent acts that took place there that day in the days leading up to that trade union hall massacre. And this was a guy who was the leader of the Society to erect a Stefan Bandera monument. This was clearly an act carried out again with the same intent of all these Nazis to try and slaughter a popular resistance movement that was peaceful. It was just people sitting out in front of a trade union house to this coup government that was installed by the U.S.
Yeah, so I found the article. You were lying. They were not in Donetsk. They were on the way to Severodonetsk, so they were on Ukrainian territory. Yes,
where were they coming from? Where were they coming from?
Their driver.
Where were they coming from?
Wait, hold on. Which are we talking about? In March when journalists were on the way to Kiev?
No. This was
okay,
this
because
was
that was one time where those journalists, I think we watched videos of that, where they were ambushed by Russian recon squad. There was a video of that where you can see them getting shot at. Like,
well, that's not what we're talking about.
Okay, that's good. But that was just one issue of of Russians shooting at journalists.
Adam, do you deny that it was a government organized event on May 2nd that resulted in dozens of people who were anti government who were killed?
Is it Odessa right now? Like, are we talking about Odessa? Okay. It wasn't a government organized thing. The government didn't even exist basically at that point, or it didn't have much power over. If the Ukrainian government had power to organize protests just like this in cities far away from Kiev, like 6 hours of driving, then the events in Ukraine would have turned out very differently. This was
Andriy Paruby wasn't the leader of a mass political movement that then went on to become the government of Ukraine in 2014.
Where is Andriy Paruby's political party now? So what? Or I can rephrase that.
He was the chair of the Verkhovna Rada for 5 years.
Good. And how come Ukrainian far-right parties have 1 seat out of 450 now?
Because Zelensky's regime replaced them. But at the end of the day,
Zelensky's regime replaced them. Wait, do they not have elections, or what do you mean by that? Can you explain that?
Zelensky is a centrist, pro-Russian, centrist Russian native speaker, Jewish, centrist liberal, how does that?
I'll agree with you. I'll agree with you there. I think Zelensky's campaign messaging was great. He wanted peace. He didn't want the persecution and the discrimination of ethnic Russians in Ukraine. But clearly, he's lost that battle, and he's now effectively controlled by these same forces that held power from 2014 to 2019. Like,
do you have a source on that? Do you have any source citation?
We literally have videos of Zelensky going bravely, I think, to the front lines with the Azov commanders in the Donbass, meeting with them, asking them to put down their arms and to talk about this. And they say, "We'll talk with you, but we're not going to stop fighting," because that's what he was asking them to do. They didn't want to stop fighting, and there's clear video evidence released by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry about all of this.
So it would be, I think, easier to disarm neo-Nazis in Ukraine and to sort of stem the tide of this neo-Nazi resurgence, which is, I guess, it's happening according to you. It would be like, if you're concerned about
do you deny that that's happening?
One second, if you are concerned about the resurgence of extremism in certain places, then I think we should agree that the best solution for that is for larger countries to stop fucking with the smaller country in which this resurgence is happening. Why does ISIS exist, for example? Well, US interventionism, right? The US went in, guns blazing, and destabilized the region, and then whoops, this caused a surge of extremism. Now, in Ukraine, this didn't actually cause a surge, though. That's the funny thing.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Yes,
the US
in your framework,
I agree with you. Larger countries should stop fucking with smaller countries,
so
meaning
Russia
the US
should get out of Ukraine,
the US
right?
should stop arming the Nazis in Ukraine. I agree
as
with
long
you.
as Russia leaves Ukraine, and gives them back everything, including Crimea.
Isn't that what they were
saying
trying
that
to
the
get done in the
neo-Nazis-
Minsk Accords?
No.
Nope.
They weren't trying.
You think the
Minsk
Minsk Accords were trying to give back Crimea?
They weren't trying to stop the Ukrainian Nazis from slaughtering people in the Donbass with
Minsk-
US
the
army.
No, they were
Accords-
trying to cause a ceasefire to happen in an area where they were backing a civil war, where they've already broken off territory from a sovereign
Why did
country.
Ukraine
in a
agree
civil
to it?
war?
Why did
I
Ukraine
understand
agree
now.
to the?
You're manipulating the words into this pro Ukraine propaganda mindset.
No, it's called reality.
What is it
Hinkle.
called? Okay, so who is this civil war between? Was it not between Nazis and rebels in the Donbass?
No,
it
right
was
now the
between the-
civil war is backed by the Russian military against the Ukrainian military. That's what the
What
war
about
is
the
right
past
now.
8 years?
Since 2014, Russia has had official military people. It's not even a secret on the ground in the Donbass. Yeah, of course.
They haven't had them there the entire time. That's actually
Yes, of
look up
course they
selfie
have. What do you
soldiers.
mean?
That's incorrect.
When you say
There's a
not the
video-
entire time, then so are you admitting that they were there most of the time, or what are you talking about?
No, they definitely were there at different periods throughout the 8 years, but they weren't there the entire time or the majority of the time.
They have been there the majority of the time. What do you think about the
That's
civilian airliner?
incorrect.
They got
Look at the
Okay.
International Criminal Court's preliminary examination. That's incorrect. They do highlight the different periods in which Russians went to the joint operation zone, as they refer to it. But it was only a few times. Now, were they providing artillery and heavy artillery at different times to the rebels there? Yeah, but they weren't there the entire
They
time.
weren't
or
just
the majority of
providing
the time.
military, like the platforms that these people were using were sophisticated platforms to shoot down things like Malaysian Airlines Flight 17. These were platforms that couldn't be operated by random people with no idea. Like
And the
required Russian
Ukrainians had
military
heavier
personnel.
artillery.
Okay, and the Ukrainians are fighting a civil war in their country. I would expect them to use heavy artillery to secure their country. That
Well, I
doesn't
don't think it
justify
is their
Russia.
country. In 2014, the people in Donetsk and Lugansk voted overwhelmingly to become independent states.
That's not
At
how that
gun
works. You
points.
can't just vote away to break away from a country. Do you think
Well,
the European Union would be
when-
justified in invading Scotland and holding them hostage because they wanted to stay in the EU when the
but hold
United
on.
Kingdom voted to leave? Like,
the founding of
hold on, Hans. No, wait. I want Jackson to answer that. Do you think that if the European Union had put together an army and invaded Scotland, would they be able to hold on to that because they voted to stay in the European Union and the rest of the United Kingdom voted to leave? Do you think that'd be justified?
Well, you're making a false comparison here. At the end of the day, the people of Donetsk and Lugansk were facing not just harassment, not just discrimination and torture, but also death.
But the Russian
as a
guns as
result
well.
of the
Hold on.
Ukrainians.
Hold on. You're not answering the question. I'll ask
Yes,
again.
I am.
Okay?
If
the European Union,
Let me answer the question. I wasn't done answering. You interrupted
it's
me
such a,
halfway
dude, this is
through.
like
I was
debating
answering the
Fuentes.
question.
Holy shit.
So let's just
Wait,
put this in
actually-
perspective. If Donald Trump were president and he started, mobilizing U.S. military personnel to slaughter people in Los Angeles County, and Los Angeles County decided that they wanted to vote to break away from the United States and form their own sovereign, independent state, then it wouldn't just be that they randomly voted. Something caused that to happen. And at the end of the day, it would have been the violence that ensued from whichever government in power. And that government in Ukraine was installed by a U.S.-backed coup. And it was an illegal impeachment that didn't
like
actually
all
get
of
enough
this,
votes to
I don't even know where
impeach
to-
Viktor Yanukovych.
So
When do you think the civil war in the Donbass started?
It started to pick up speed after the coup took place.
But when did it
So
start?
it started after Russia invaded and stole Crimea.
That's
one,
not an accurate.
and then
assessment.
after, and
No.
what do you mean?
It
No, do you just hear the
started
timeline,
It
or
started after the coup of Viktor Yanukovych.
so it started after Russia invaded and stole Crimea, and then it started after Russia was mobilizing
incorrect.
troops
What
in the
happened
Donbass
before Crimea?
to begin that
What
war.
happened before Crimea?
There was an ousting of a prior leader who started shooting at civilians with police officers. I mean, what do you mean?
Just
Oh,
for
that's
the
not true.
purposes.
We already had this debate. I wrecked you in this debate.
You didn't
tried to
wreck
make the
anything.
argument-
All you can
Hold on,
point to is a phone call between two ambassadors saying they
Hold
prefer
on,
one
hold on.
leader
For
to another,
purposes-
and then you think that that's evidence of a coup
For
being
purposes
staged.
of clarification, Ukraine is a very new state. Even historically, it's
It doesn't matter that it's new.
Hold on,
Ukraine was
but-
recognized in
Sure, but let me
1991
finish
by
my
every
point.
other sovereign country in the
Yeah, yeah.
world.
I'd
That
like
state
to
could have
finish-
started
I'd
existing in
like to- I'd like to
2010.
finish-
It's been
I'd
a
like
while
to
since
finish
we've
my
heard
point.
from Infra. Go ahead, Infra.
Yeah. So the founding of Ukraine, which is an extremely new state, the idea of this unified territory being encompassed by one sovereign state, that was founded on the premise that everyone was going to have equal representation, whether they're Russian speaking or Ukraine speaking, right, in the West. And it just so happens that the person who was ousted, as you mentioned, was overwhelmingly the representative of the Russian speakers within Eastern Ukraine. So after that coup, which ousted the person that represented their stake in Ukrainian sovereignty, I don't see how Ukraine can continue to lay claim to this territory
Because they
when
held elections after he was ousted.
But how
But
was
it's
he
not- it's not
ousted?
like-
was it illegal?
those elections
impeachment?
were considered
Was it-
illegitimate.
Wait.
No,
by the
those
people
elections
who-
aren't considered illegitimate. Not like the
By
ones
the-
that happened in
by the
Crimea
people in
after
the
Russia
East, they were.
invaded.
Destiny,
the
was it
people in the
illegal
East, they were.
impeachment?
Was it? Well, he didn't get impeached. He ran away because he knew he was probably
No,
going to
yeah,
get
they
fucked for
tried to
having his
impeach
police
him.
officers murdering civilians in the
Was it
street.
illegal impeachment?
No, but they held legal elections afterwards.
Did he leave the country before that took place?
Yep.
No. Where did he go to?
He ran to
Russia.
Russia.
No, he didn't.
Where did he go to?
He went to Kharkiv.
First to Kharkiv, from Kharkiv, he went to Russia. Details.
He went to Kharkiv, and then they had right when he left for Kharkiv. First of all, they started to rain hellfire down with snipers on what they thought was his group of cars that was leaving the city, and then they stormed his own personal home and government buildings. Do you not think that that's a coup?
That storming
the fact,
was
considering the
civilians,
fact that he
civilians
hadn't
showing up
he
to his
hadn't,
residence
he hadn't
and just
left the
wandering in.
country, and you admit that it was not a legal impeachment.
Do you think that a coup usually is democratic elections that occur afterwards? Is that a coup to you? I'm just curious.
Yeah, it can. It definitely can.
Okay,
You
so a
can
coup
oust-
can be there's a bunch of protests and rioting.
Yes,
a
because
leader,
I'll explain
the
why.
leader flees from his
Yes.
country, which he did, and then afterwards they
No,
hold
okay.
democratic
No.
elections,
So
and that's a coup.
Let's not pretend that him fleeing was the pretext for choosing a new leader. There was sniper fire against him as he was trying to supposedly leave, or as he was trying to leave, to correct myself. There was a raiding, as Jackson put it, of his office. So there was clearly an intent to oust Yanukovych before he left. Now, Yanukovych is the guy that the people of Eastern Ukraine voted for. They're not going to recognize any new. That would be like Trump deciding that he's not going to accept the elections and he's going to
hold on, but literally Putin came out and said he would accept the elections of the Ukraine presidential election after he left.
The people of Eastern Ukraine they're not the puppets of Putin. They disagreed. They didn't accept those elections because they voted for Yanukovych.
What?
Now, in their view, if we're going to vote for someone and they're just going to decide that they're going to be able to coup them, like why should they?
He
even
didn't
bother,
just get
you know?
coup; he fled.
Well, there
No,
was
the
an intent
Verkhovna,
to
that's
illegally
factually
oust him.
incorrect. The Verkhovna Rada said that he was no longer president. They declared him no longer president and installed an interim president prior
Hold on,
to
the interim
him-
president was the leader
That's-
of
can
was
I-
the
hey,
leader of the
hey,
majority party.
modern day
It's
debates.
not-
Can I have
I'll
a sentence here?
Oh,
I
Jesus,
was
so
in the
much
middle of a
misinformation.
sentence.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jackson.
Okay. The Verkhovna Rada had already placed an interim president in his place while Viktor Yanukovych was still in Kharkiv, by the way. And you admit that they were 10 votes short of actually legally impeaching him. Therefore, this was an illegal seizure of power.
Who the interim president that was installed? Who was this guy that was installed?
Let me pull up his name. It was before Poroshenko.
It was the leader of the opposition party. It wasn't just a random guy. It was already somebody that was like massively popular in their electoral. It wasn't just a random dude that they.
Popular among portions of Western Ukraine. He was not representative of the.
I'm just saying, when you say installed a new leader, you make it sound
Well,
like they picked a random
he
dude.
He was installed because again they were 10 votes short of impeaching.
They were 10 votes
Yanukovych.
short before, but after the people started getting shot in the streets, I'm pretty sure that like literally everybody but
No.
6 people voted for the impeachment afterwards.
Let's hear
All international
One second. I
One
think
second.
Jackson. I want to give Jackson maybe 30 seconds or so uninterrupted, and I promise we'll come back to the next person.
I mean, I didn't have a lot to say other than I'm still looking up the name of this guy that was before Poroshenko, if you want me to. I'll also say that we discussed this Destiny last time and you kind of made a fool of yourself, but most independent experts that are investigating what took place in the Euromaidan Square protest recognize that it was Euromaidan-controlled snipers, specifically Georgian snipers, that were responsible for the deaths in the Euromaidan Square. The Ukrainian security personnel thought that it was Euromaidan forces that were responsible for this. And everyone, regardless, does agree that the snipers were firing from Euromaidan-controlled buildings. That is one thing that everyone does agree on.
Jackson, actually, real quickly, I think you either didn't know or you lied about the timeline of Yanukovych's escape. Viktor Yanukovych left Kiev on the 21st of February and then turned up in Moscow on the 26th of February, 2014. Now, the first Yatsenyuk government was formed the day after, on the 27th of February. And at that point,
when did they declare that he was no longer president? Because that's what I was pointing out here.
Oh, I think that's at this point is irrelevant. If we want to go back to popular vote in April,
that's extremely relevant. If he's still, hey,
one second. Let me finish.
If he's still in Ukraine,
let me finish. I do want to get Thomas Jackson. We'll come right back to you, and then I just want to hear from maybe 30 seconds from Adam.
Sure, I just want to add this. And if you want to go by popular vote, then in April 2014, according to a Razumkov Center poll, only 4.9% of Ukrainians would have wanted to see Yanukovych return to the presidency. So I guess that does it, right? Popular vote.
Okay. First of all, Destiny, his name was Alexander Tuchnov. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce it.
Turchinov.
Second of all, yes, it does matter if Viktor Yanukovych is still in Ukraine, specifically in Kharkiv, the second biggest city at the time in Ukraine. If they are declaring him no longer president, it doesn't matter when they set up the new government, but if they're declaring him no longer president, they were 10 votes short of getting a legal impeachment. Yes, that does matter because they are illegally forcing him out of power.
So are you like some like centrist liberal now, like the law, that we can't have a revolution because
I think the constitutional law in Ukraine is pretty important when you're talking about the illegal seizure of power. Apparently, you don't think so.
In that case, we will never have a glorious socialist revolution because then it can just be voted down.
Why are you bringing?
But to be clear, so Ukrainian members of parliament voted to oust Yanukovych on the 25th of May.
They were 10 votes short of achieving an impeachment. There was an impeachment vote.
Okay, well, all I've seen is that they voted him out. So are you saying that's not true?
Remember last time when Dylan Burns tried to argue that he was legally impeached, and then we had to go to the vote tally and show that they were 10 votes short of getting 3/4 approval of a legal impeachment?
Was this before police officers were firing on civilians, or?
So do you think that the allegation?
Because I see here that the vote to remove Viktor Yanukovych from the post of president of Ukraine was passed by 328 members of parliament.
So
such ballots passed by what is called constitutional majority are binding and enter into force with immediate effect.
Oops.
So
hold on. According to Ukrainian law, they were 10 short of the necessary requirement to get.
Was this before police were firing on civilians?
I want to ask you that question. Do you think that an allegation of police firing on civilians is
video of police firing on civilians?
Is that grounds for the dissolution of the form of a country's sovereignty, which is their constitutional law?
I don't think their sovereignty was
chasing away the president.
Because live fire has been used against protesters in several countries across their history, not discounting the United States. Does that mean that the law and the constitutional law should be suspended?
No, but if the people of Ukraine disagreed with what was happening, I would have expected that to be reflected in some vote afterwards. But that isn't.
The people of Ukraine were divided, and Yanukovych represented the people in the east.
Based on the poll that Adam just gave me, and based on the MP's vote to oust Yanukovych, it doesn't sound like they were divided at all.
Why do you keep bringing this up?
4.8% wanted Yanukovych to remain in power. So too bad.
Doesn't matter. The law of the land said that you need 338 votes to get a legal impeachment. That's 3/4 of the Verkhovna Rada. They only had 328. Even with all the threat of violence, U.S. pressure, London's pressure,
U.S. pressure,
10 votes short of actually impeaching him while he was still in the country. And they declared that he was no longer president. You understand how that's a problem, right?
Okay, so this is my timeline that I'm understanding. Tell me if you agree with this. So there was a vote initially that you're talking about that failed by 10 members of parliament, right? Then the police deaths happened. The shooting of the protesters and everything happened. Then there was another vote on February 22nd. And then afterwards, Yanukovych fled. And then on May 25th, there was an election. That wasn't the second impeachment vote. But I believe on February 22nd, they voted to oust him. No?
February 27th?
22nd. Here, I'll link this, or maybe you can just say this is a fake vote, okay? That on the 22nd.
No, that's incorrect. In fact, it was February 23rd in which they took the impeachment vote, according to what I have here. Maybe
link me what you have, because what I have here is a BBC article on the 22nd saying Ukrainian MPs vote to oust President Yanukovych.
So that was probably, I mean, it's a BBC article. That's probably them announcing that they were about to take this vote. And then, yeah, on February 23rd, they took the vote and they were 10 votes short.
Can you link me that? Show me that.
Okay.
Also, articles can be updated. I don't know if you know that, but
the article is not updated.
Okay, well, then Jackson's explanation is probably the most.
Destiny, I think we have a problem. I heard BBC is run by George Soros. Jackson likes to mention him a lot.
That's
so it might be a suspicious. Oh yeah, like infra. If I were you, I wouldn't talk. Like, didn't you debate like the Destiny, like when you teamed up with Nick Fuentes, like a neo-Nazi?
Again, you're bringing up all of these insubstantial comments and arguments as to the actual debate we're having. I don't know why you would pivot to something completely irrelevant. Maybe it's because you're losing.
If we want to, and even if we want to move forward in this conversation, even if theoretically we were to grant every single thing that's being said, that there was like an illegal vote and that this was like a coup or whatever, this is a bad thing, none of this gives Russia the right to invade the country. Right. Even if I wouldn't grant all of it, but even if I did grant all of that, it doesn't give.
Destiny,
I agree. That alone,
Destiny, I just sent it to you. Yeah. It's resolution of the Verkhovna Rada of February 23rd, 2014, 10 votes short of getting a legal impeachment. So I was right.
Well, link me the article. Link me your in chat what you're talking about.
I just sent it to you on Twitter DMs. I'm on my.
Why would you send it on Twitter? Just send it on Zoom.
You don't have Twitter?
I don't feel like opening my fucking Twitter. Just send it on Zoom where we're all chatting.
This again on my PC. I just did it for you on my laptop. Are you incapable of using Twitter?
Yeah, I am. I think it's Soros is reading my DMs. So I don't trust the platform.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that alone would justify a Russian invasion, but
I agree.
You would have to do some serious revisions about the events that led to that to make it seem like that's even their justification.
But just for the record, I was right and you were wrong. So you can you can apologize for being wrong about that.
Yeah, sure.
Anytime you want.
So going through the article. Yeah, I mean, if they were 10 votes short, I mean, that's how revolutions work. That's how regime changes work.
What are you talking about? He was still in the country. This was a violent seizure of power. I mean, he fled, and they didn't get enough votes to impeach him. So you're the argument you're making is like, well, you know, it's okay because there were some people who wanted this, despite the fact that the constitutional 3/4 majority was not met. That's if you were to say there's a bunch of people in the United States who don't like Joe Biden, so therefore we should just illegally seize the power.
Okay, let's just read. This is the source that Jackson said.
Let's just one thing. Adam's saying something. He's saying something pretty interesting.
Let's just read this because this is what Jackson sent me. Okay.
Hold on. Let me just. I just want to respond really quickly to what Adam said. You're saying that it was a revolution and we can just suspend the law. Well, I think the people in the Donbass would say the same thing when they decided to declare independent republics. That was their revolution. And you're saying 95% of people, if polls constituted grounds for a legal order, I mean, then we wouldn't even have elections. We would just take polls. Obviously, polling is not going to be reliable.
Those elections were made under Russian gunpoint, so that's a way different situation. I don't
Do you
know
have any? So are you
It's
trying to say that the people of Donetsk and Lugansk are not overwhelmingly in favor of?
When in Donetsk and Luhansk there were more pro-Russian sentiment, ironically because of the Russian propagandizing that went on there.
Also, they're either being brainwashed or it's at gunpoint.
One sec. Just one second. So yes. So this is a very complicated conversation. Interesting nonetheless. I don't know if you want to get into it though. Lots of nuance. But the thing is, Russia has been actively propagandizing in the south and east of Ukraine, the Russian-speaking parts, through their media empire. Like imagine like a 24/7 Newsmax.
I understand. It's just funny you want to go down the argument of propaganda when the world's media is more or less concentrated to the in the Anglosphere. And, obviously the United States dominates as far as soft power media is concerned. So if you want to talk about people being brainwashed by media, I mean, what kind of ideas were inspiring the people at the Maidan? It was
as bad as U.S. media can be. The Russian media and Russian propagandizing is an entirely different beast. Don't worry about it.
But that's like your opinion. That's like your opinion. No. Someone could say the same thing about the United States media.
I would say Russian state media is like Fox News on crack, right? With some imperialist agenda. It's like a nonstop.
But the difference is that Russian media hasn't led to the wholesale destruction of places like Iraq, Libya, and the Middle East.
It led to the destruction of now the Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine. So I don't know what you're talking about. It seems like these reactionary states.
That destruction was overwhelmingly caused by the Ukrainian paramilitaries and military.
Oh, sure. The Ukrainians destroyed Mariupol just for fun, right? And like all these cities, like the pictures of the
that's what the civilians say. I didn't think this debate.
Civilians did not say that. That is not true. What? Can I read what Jackson like?
So your polls are reliable.
Destiny. Do you want to talk about this? The evidence I put forward that there was a vote on February 23rd, 2014 to confirm.
Wait, can I just read what you sent me? Why are you so scared of me reading what you sent me?
Of the Verkhovna Rada,
Destiny, please
and they were 10
I don't understand.
short of getting an impeachment.
I don't understand. Can I just read what you sent me, or are you going to interrupt me? Is that okay? This is what you sent me, so I should be able to read it. Yes.
I asked you a question, and you interrupt me as if I'm the one interrupting.
Oh my god, dude!
You're literally insane.
It's like unbelievable.
And I mean this in the most sincere way possible. I think you might be borderline schizophrenic. I swear.
Don't do it.
Okay. I hope you find help.
Okay, so. Linking what Jackson linked me, which was a Wikipedia article. The Ukrainian Revolution of February 2014 took place after a series of violent events towards protesters in the capital, Kyiv, that culminated with the flight and subsequent then president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, who was then removed from the office. There were no articles of impeachment against Yanukovych. The Verkhovna Rada committee voted on February 22nd, 2014. MPs voted to remove Viktor Yanukovych from the post of president of Ukraine on the grounds that he was unable to fulfill his duties and to hold early presidential elections on May 25th. The vote came an hour after Yanukovych said in a televised address that he would not resign. He subsequently declared himself to still be the legitimate head of the Ukrainian state, elected in a free vote by Ukrainian citizens. The action did not follow the impeachment process as specified by the Constitution of Ukraine, which would have required a whole official putting forth impeachment charges and everything. But there was a vote that they held to oust him as president because in order for the government to continue functioning, they needed to do so because he had abandoned his post.
So is that an unconstitutional vote or is that a constitutional?
I guess, but it's all, he left. And so to quote your thing, instead, the Verkhovna Rada declared that Yanukovych, quote, withdrew from his duties in an unconstitutional manner, unquote, and cited, quote, circumstances of extreme urgency, end quote, as the reason for early elections.
Destiny, he was still in Kharkiv when they took this vote. And the vote says, quote, to confer the powers of the president of Ukraine on chairman of the Verkhovna Rada, which was Torchny Alexander, whatever his name is. And this is literally
Kharkov where the government is ran?
Seizure of power. And as you put it, an ouster of Viktor Yanukovych, there were 10 votes short of any constitutional requirement to actually move through with this ouster. Yeah,
to do the impeachment, they weren't able to get the votes for it, but to actually oust him to make sure the government continued to function, it seemed like they voted almost unanimously to do so.
But that was not a binding
power, though. He's still in the country. There's no reason for there to be an ouster.
Well, the reason they cited was because the guy fled from government, and there was no way to run the government.
Destiny, I was really bad at math in high school, but I'm pretty sure.
Hold on, wait. Do you acknowledge that he left the government? Do you acknowledge that he left the government? Do you acknowledge that he left the government? Do you acknowledge that he left the government?
I think so. I think so.
Do you acknowledge that he fled? That he left? He left the government?
The vote took place while he was in Kharkiv. But yeah, he did.
Is Kharkiv where you're supposed to be like the head of the state? Is that where?
Hold on, to answer this question.
Russia after snipers rained down hellfire on his band of cars that
after he ordered police to assassinate protesters.
There was a violent incursion into his office and his actual primary residence. So yeah, after that all took place, he went to Russia, but he was still in Kharkiv.
So the argument here is that if a head of state is evacuating the capital because of a threat of violence, that is not the same as stepping down from government.
I agree with that, and they didn't follow their impeachment process, but they did vote 328-0 to remove him from his post.
which
they
was
were
not
10
enough
votes short of
as per
removing him.
Ukraine's
Actually,
constitution.
I actually have one important thing to add. At that point, after the firings, etc., I believe the reason why they didn't have the constitutional majority is because Yanukovych's party kind of just fled also and disbanded, and they basically all went to Russia. So I think that was the reason why they didn't have the majority, even though they voted 328-0, basically.
But you just called it a revolution, and you just said the law.
Yeah, it was. Fuck yeah!
So, you agree that it was not following the procedures of the form of Ukraine's sovereignty enshrined in its constitution.
It was following it. It was still a revolution. Those things are not exclusive.
They definitely are incompatible. If it's going to be a revolution, then you're going to overthrow the prior form of the legal order and the sovereign order. So they did, as per their constitutional requirement, it was not enough.
The legal order wasn't really overthrown. Like the same legal system.
So was the constitutional requirement met, or was it not met?
It seems like the constitutional requirement for impeachment wasn't met, but the reasons why were extraordinary. It seemed like they didn't want to go through the process.
But the Ukraine's legal order does not allow.
Can we actually use our brains a little bit, or is it really going to be this retarded?
I would love to use my
if we look at this coup, after the president,
sorry, but people
the violence.
Can I just do my 30 seconds and then they can respond? So after he fled, they didn't go through formal impeachment charges because the country was literally in fucking chaos. They didn't want to run the courts and run the thing to figure out so they had a vote in their parliament to see what they should do. Did he abandon his post? When they took that vote, the Rada voted 328-0 to remove him from the government so that the government could continue to function so that the country wouldn't fall into chaos. After they voted to oust him, they held democratic elections and followed their democratic process afterwards. That seems to be what happened. Now, if you want to call that like an illegal coup or seizure of power, that's fine. You can do that, but don't pretend that he was just like kicked out of the government and they installed a new leader or whatever. That's not what happened.
That's exactly what happened. You can't have democratic elections to replace a president if you have an illegal ouster of said president.
Especially when you consider that the entire pretext of him leaving the capital was criminal and illegal mass violence being conducted by the by the people living in Kiev, who were not acting as the representatives of the entire people of Ukraine. So if that's the pretext for him leaving in the first place, of course it would not be legal according to any democratic constitution.
Why did he leave the country?
Because of the threats of violence he was facing.
Why didn't Zelensky leave the country?
Zelensky's well protected wherever he is.
Zelensky is what you told me on this platform, I think a month ago, that Russia was going to control Kiev in literally 3 days. You're telling me that Zelensky is well protected with the Russian military invading his country, but you're telling me that Yanukovych was under massive threat because of some riots?
Not only riots, but various sniper fire. He didn't have Yanukovych did not have the Ukrainian security apparatus.
He literally did. The whole Belarus or whatever police force was still protecting him. Of course. What do you mean?
Yeah,
you understand though that those police forces were being sniped from the Euromaidan controlled buildings in Euromaidan Square. So they were literally killing police officers and civilians.
Is there any actual evidence of sniper fire? Is that a real thing? Can you show me that?
Like sniper fire on police officers by protesters?
Like, what do you mean is there evidence of sniper fire? You're the one who the entire time throughout this debate, you've been saying that there was sniper fire on protesters.
No, what I said was that.
Yes,
what I said was that.
Was that before?
No.
Okay, well, I'm glad we have video evidence.
We have video evidence. So if you rewind, what you'll hear me say is that police officers fired on protesters. We've got video evidence of it. I didn't say they sniped them.
Rap God, stop talking. So you've been saying throughout this entire debate that was it before or was it after the sniper fire began to rain down on the protesters? I don't know how many times you've said this. You're like a broken record. And now you're saying that there wasn't sniper fire and you want proof of sniper fire.
I said that the police fire. Do you want to bet like $10 on it? If I said there was sniper fire from police and protesters, or if I just said police fired on protesters?
You said sniper fire.
I said police fired on protesters.
You said sniper fire.
Do you want to bet on it? Do you want to bet $10?
Sure, I'll bet $10.
Okay, we'll bet $10. You give me the clip, I'll PayPal you $10 afterwards. If I did say it, I misspoke. And what I've said a million times is that police officers fired on protesters. They absolutely did. There's video evidence looked at by third parties. You can go and watch it right now. It's undeniable.
Georgian police officers that were controlled by the Euromaidan protesters. Yeah.
No, they were literally the yellow whatever wearing police officers. You can see them in their police officer protected position.
That's a convincing argument, yellow wearing police officers. But what I can tell you is that Georgian police officers have actually actually admitted to this in testimonies.
You're just lying. This is I can't engage with this. If you want, you can literally Google New York Times police shooting Ukraine reconstruction, and you can literally watch videos put together by independent people that modeled the city, looked at thousands of hours of cell phone video footage, and it put together. Like you can see directly police shooting from areas into protester areas. You can see them shooting and killing protesters. It's like.
Yeah,
it's like
last time though the last story was that the snipers were Polish. Now they're Georgian. I'm glad they just I guess changed with the wind. But no, what we disagree with is that protesters or Azov battalion or members or whatever or right sector members were sniping police. There were firefights, but the massive sniping of protesters happened by the police. There's video evidence.
That's incorrect. In fact, there was a forensic ballistic examination conducted
by
the
YouTube
government.
Listen,
Adam,
wait, hold on, wait. Let him finish. Let Jackson finish. I've heard this conspiracy theory before.
There was a forensic ballistic examination which showed that the bullet samples found in protesters and police alike in police databases did not match up to the assault rifles that the Berkut Kalashnikov was using.
That's
in addition
not true.
to that, we also have several former members of the Georgian military who testified that they and other groups of Maidan snipers in the Hotel Ukraina and the Music Conservatory were ordered by specific Maidan leaders and ex-Georgian leaders to fire on police and protesters, and that they witnessed the massacre.
The idea that there, I just want to be clear on this. So you're telling me that you don't believe police officers ever fired and killed up protesters?
Now you're giving me an absolute statement. Maybe, I don't know. But what I do know is that the deaths that we saw in the Euromaidan Square on that bloody day, where there was several dozen people were killed by snipers at the control of the Euromaidan protesters and organizers.
Okay, so when I tell you that what is it? The Beirut. There's a name.
Okay. Also, we're just going to move past the ballistic evidence and act like that didn't happen. Cool, got it.
I don't know if you want to show me ballistic evidence. You feel free to link me that as well. Okay. But the idea, if we're going to bring Olga Bulga up in this debate, I
don't know. I think ballistic evidence is kind of important. I don't know. Maybe
depends on who.
I'm silly.
Oh, the Berkut. Those police officers. Yeah, they were ordered by Yanukovych to fire on protesters, and they did. We have video evidence.
Why did the bullets not match up with their assault rifles?
I don't know what bullets match up with their assault rifles mean. If you get an actual bullet and you get an assault rifle, you can look at the striations of the round. I don't know if that type of forensic analysis was done, but you can laugh all you want. But we can watch the videos, dude.
Oh, it's just incredible.
It's 2020. The year is 2014. The year is 2014. We've got video footage of fucking everything that happens. They did a full reconstruction, of everything. You can measure when the bullet leaves. You can hear the sounds across cell phones, and you can see who's getting shot by who. It's not a mystery.
Hinkle, can you link that to us? Can you link that?
Yes,
the forensic investigation.
Yes, you did ask for that. I will.
Sure. And if anybody's bored, here's this in the Zoom chat. If you want to watch it later, you can literally watch the videos of people getting killed. You can see from multiple cell phone angles where the shots are coming from. We've got CCTV footage of the police officers behind their barricades shooting directly into protesters. You can see from 4 different angles the bullet going to the protester and killing him. You can measure the sound waves off of every single fucking cell phone that's recording it. It's not a mystery. And then meanwhile on your end, you've got Olga Bulga saying she does forensic investigation to prove that it's all fake.
I see what contradictory. One sec.
There is no contradictory evidence. Sorry, go ahead.
I see what Hinkle is. I see what Hinkle is doing now. This is like a paywall article, so we cannot check immediately.
It's not a paywall article.
Yes, it is. For me, there's a paywall.
I didn't even send it to you. How do you have a paywall?
Oh, sure. That's the one that I sent. New York Times.
Oh, sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, it was Destiny. Sorry.
Paywall.
Okay, so Hinkle, please link it because I'm interested. Is it now? I'm gonna go through it quickly as Destiny takes the lead.
Not only is everything that's being said so far just completely without substantiation, even if it was,
we're literally the only ones providing substantiation.
Even if we granted every single thing you've said, none of this gets you anywhere near allowing Russia to invade another country to try to break away territory.
That's a leap. To get to where to get to the point of Russia invading Ukraine, we're just trying to first establish the legitimacy of the will of the people of Donetsk and Lugansk and Crimea because of the coup in the Maidan. Now, as far as the events leading up to Russia's intervention, that's a different story.
Sure. So let's say that there was a coup. What is the justification for Russia to invade?
Russia decided that it wanted to settle the matter peacefully through the Minsk agreements, which the Ukrainian government had agreed to. Now,
it's not peaceful to take territory from another country. You understand that, right?
Right. It's also not peaceful to have a violent coup. So that's square,
No,
zero.
hold on. Two wrongs don't make a right. If
Well,
we thought that
I'll
the
explain it this
Belarusian
way.
elections weren't allowed or weren't okay, do you think that means we can go and
I'll explain it
invade
this way.
Belarus?
Sure. It is definitely not justified.
Oh, sure, we can. Okay.
It's definitely not just justified for a country to come in and just take territory, regardless of the will of the people living there. But when you do have an overthrow of the constitutional order and the people of a certain region overwhelmingly decide that they want to join another sovereign state that they're historically, ethnically, and linguistically and culturally closer to.
None of that matters, but okay.
That is definitely not the same as a country just coming in and taking it. If people in their sovereign capacity decide that they want to join another state that they feel will represent them better than the one that had just overthrew their democratically elected representative, that's not the same thing as a country just coming in.
So if enough people in Texas voted to secede and they wanted to join Mexico, would Mexico be right to send an army into the United States to secure that territory?
If there was a coup in the United States that overthrew the constitutional order and there was all this, everything was thrown up in the air and the people of Texas, for some reason, were no longer able to have any sovereign representation in the capital, then of course it would be justified.
Do you understand what you're doing for? Do you understand what you're doing?
Justified in this country.
Do you understand what you're doing for norms around the world when you say that if any country has a coup, another country has a right to come in and peel off territory from that country? You don't think that
is not what I'm saying at all. I am not.
That's exactly what you're saying.
No,
you're saying that there was a coup in Ukraine and some group of people felt like they weren't being represented as a result of that coup, so they want to break away and join another country. And you're saying that if that is the case,
that's not the same as another country just coming in and peeling it away, because one implies that they're just doing it at the expense of the people living there.
Not necessarily. You can peel away. We could probably find some people in Mexico or Canada that want to join the U.S. and send a military there to go and support them. Like
when you're
also acting as though that coup government wasn't responsible for violence against its own civilians who wanted to break away as a result of the coup.
By breaking away, you've already committed a violent act. So of course, I would expect a country to violently defend its sovereignty.
But didn't you say two wrongs don't make a right? Before?
No, self-defense is not a wrong. If somebody's trying to break away from your country, you have a right to defend your sovereignty. Of course.
if someone overthrows your democratically elected representative, which
they had democratic elections afterwards, did they not?
No, those were not considered legitimate by the people living there because they are.
Who didn't consider them legitimate? Even Putin considered these elections legitimate.
But Putin is not the people of Eastern Ukraine. The people of Eastern
Ukraine don't get to unilaterally just say we don't like the elections, therefore they're not legitimate.
No, but they do get to say that if you overthrow our elected representative, we don't have to recognize whatever new elections you're doing because we already voted for a guy before and you just got rid of him.
Okay, so if they didn't like the new leader, they have a right now to basically break away.
No, that's not what I said.
Not whether or not they liked him or didn't like him. There was an illegal ouster of this president that was pressed by violence from thugs of criminals that were propped up by the United States and people like current Undersecretary of State Victoria Nuland.
Oh, sounds like a true czarist over here.
True. Okay.
Yeah.
I think Adam, you just confined yourself to making like these snide, insubstantial comments.
No, because I've heard them all. Yes. So my frustration with you is that you of course are way more into this like hard like leftist revolutionaire aesthetic, Yeah. and then here we are, and then I'm supposed to be like the either lipcock or Nazi or whatever, and then it's you who are questioning, who are saying that a revolution or regime change is not valid because you didn't get the votes. You were 10 votes short.
If you want to have a philosophical argument about
the glorious revolution failed because we were 10 votes short. Also, something interesting. Wait, just one more point. Yeah. Something that was also mentioned that when I think Hinkle mentioned that like the mob stormed the palace of Yanukovych, right? Which is like it wasn't a storming. People just like kind of showed up to his villa, which is where did that come from, right? The money for it, and people just strolled in, and to this day it is the museum of corruption in Ukraine. You can go up. It's in Mezhigiria. It's in a northern Kiev suburb.
Was this friendly occupation legal?
This is this is the same energy as Soviet communist troops, red troops showing up to the Tsar's palaces in Russia and looking around, saying, "Wow, look!"
No, that's the reason that's not comparable.
Now it's the people's.
Yeah, the reason that's not comparable is because the October Revolution was already precipitated by the February Revolution, which overthrew an autocracy, which was not a modern democratic state in any capacity. It was not some kind of constitutional order. It was a pure autocracy, which was overthrown already by the February Revolution. And it was the Kerensky government, which was in power at the time, which also, lost in the constitutive elections with the unity of the Bolsheviks and the left SRs deciding that they wanted to get out of the war and overthrow. So, the comparison's completely void. You can't say
my point. My point was that you so vehemently opposed the spirit of this whole thing, right? Because Yanukovych wasn't an absolute monarch, but he was actually leaning towards it, ordering his police to fire at protesters.
Wait, but you're saying
signing in the protest laws.
Adam.
He criminalized protesting, for example, and he also made it legal to try people in absentia. So even if you aren't in the courthouse, you cannot defend yourself, don't have a lawyer. The court can just sentence you to 20 years of prison for just.
True. Was this called
in the United States right now is illegally extraditing Julian Assange to lock him up in a CIA black site for 175 years.
Hold on, real quick. Do you think the United States is anywhere comparable to the laws that Yanukovych passed before he fled the country?
Adam, I don't know why you keep bringing up this conspiracy theory that there was snipers raining down on the protesters that were controlled by Viktor Yanukovych when I just sent you proof, testimonies from the people on the ground there who were saying that they saw snipers shooting from Hotel Ukraina window. Yes, saw a sniper near the roof of the Hotel Ukraina sign, and another sniper on the roof of this hotel on Zhozhnevny Palace side. These were all Ukrainian Euromaidan controlled buildings.
Yes. There's no ballistic analysis in this article?
No, we do have the.
I went through this article
too.
I went through this article. It's written by Ivan Kachanovsky. This seems to be the conclusions of one guy.
It is his Russian propaganda. I will not look at it. The ballistic evidence is not worth my time.
No. I've actually read it, and it's pretty underwhelming. It's no sources whatsoever. It's the guy.
No sources.
The guy's strongly insisting. Basically,
there's an irony here.
Study.
There's an irony here because you said something earlier. You said something about how if I'm a revolutionary, why do I think a constitutional order is important?
Yeah, why are you such a bootlicker?
I want to actually talk about that because your argument actually reminds me of a literal argument Mussolini and Hitler made when they were reproached by the communists about suspending the legal constitutional order of their respective countries. Oh, it was just a revolution, just like what you guys did. And this evinces the fact that it seems like these ultra liberals like yourselves and outright fascists and Nazis have the same line of thinking that
I am more pro-revolution than you are. Actually,
you can just suspend the constitutional order of a country at the expense of the actual people living there. And moreover, not only can you do that, but you can actually deny the ability for people who want to, after the suspension of this constitutional order, have their own revolution and say that's somehow illegitimate and illegal. You can't at the same time speak on behalf of the legal order while at the same time having overthrown it. So pick your argument. I'm not even saying that, I'm just defending the constitutional order of Ukraine. I'm defending the right of the people in Donetsk and Lugansk and Crimea to exercise their sovereign right to secede from Ukraine.
Sure, but when that happened, when those votes happened in Donetsk and Luhansk, they were already occupied by paramilitary troops supported by Russia. So it was happening under gunpoint, same in Crimea. So those are not the same.
So when you say it happens under gunpoint, are you trying to say that if it weren't for that fact, there wouldn't have been overwhelming pro-Russian sentiment in those regions to leave?
You know, probably it was more. It was
what does
more
gunpoint mean? That's extremely
gunpoint. In gunpoint, yes, in gunpoint means in Crimea, government buildings were taken over by the polite green men. That was Russian Spetsnaz, and based on
were there demonstrations in front of those government buildings by ordinary Crimeans who actually were expressing protest against the coup?
No, because the streets are full of Russian special forces with guns.
And so those were all Russian special forces who were gathering in front of the Capitol building in Crimea. Is that what you're trying to allege?
But the little green man with the advanced Russian weaponry and the green suits and no insignia.
What about the mobs of civilian protesters who were protesting the ousting of Yanukovych in Crimea? Were those little green men?
Who?
The protesters. The protesters that were very frustrated at the idea that there was this illegal ouster of their president that they voted
yes, sure.
for. And then wait, I'm not done yet. And then in addition to that, when, as you put it, they had democratic elections, they didn't want those people to vote in the Donbass. They didn't want people in Donetsk and Lugansk to be able to vote in the so-called democratic election. So I don't really know why.
Wait, people in the Donbass were kept from voting for new leaders, for new leadership? There were no...
certain portions, yes.
Actually,
Wait,
oligarchical governors were appointed by the Ukrainian government to, in this feudal way, rule over the people of the Donbass. Even.
Wait,
Of course,
what?
like
I've never heard this claim before.
No. Like, I mean,
And then I wasn't done yet.
this actually more of a Russian thing to have regions be ruled by strongmen. This is actually
But the
something
Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republics overthrew people like Kolomoisky and other oligarchical families that had directly controlled the government.
Kolomoisky was in Dnipro, in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast. The east was firmly Yanukovych area. So he was
overthrown by the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic. They overthrew and unseated these oligarchical families.
Yanukovych, there in the east, Yanukovych was the bigwig in town, right? It was his base.
Yeah, but he was appointed after the Maidan to serve as governor, to be clear. He was only dismissed in 2016 by Poroshenko. Mm-hmm. So that was years after
Viktor
the Maidan.
Yanukovych, was Viktor Yanukovych still what did we say, governor of Donetsk and Luhansk Oblast?
God, you stutter so much.
No, he was not.
No.
Yanukovych was not.
Hey, do you guys deny that the Ukrainians were planning a full-scale invasion?
Why do we jump from like one conspiracy to the next? We like can't solve any point. Like,
well, we put up all this evidence and we give you guys all these sources, and then you say, "Well, I don't believe these sources because they are Russian propaganda."
Evidence for hold on. I'm just curious. What is
next thing that you're probably going to deny, even though we'll give you evidence?
Can you? Okay, this is what happens when somebody is scared because they know they don't have a good point, so they just have to pivot from one point to the next to the next.
I let you talk a little bit before we go into the Q&A, so I do want to make sure that people are able to hear what you guys are saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so at this point, like Hinkle is kind of out of arguments, and he's trying.
Yeah, I'm good to go like right to the Q&A.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I think we can go.
No. I would like to address one last thing. Do you deny that the Ukrainian top brass military personnel were planning a full-scale invasion into the Donbass in March of 2022?
I don't know how you can invade your own sovereign territory. That is
March of 2022, as in like a month, like weeks after the Russian invasion began.
No, prior to the Russian invasion
that was February.
Launched, there was documents that were being prepared by top military brass that they were going to launch an invasion into the Donbass, a full-scale invasion.
So let me get this straight. Ukraine, so Russia masses all these 150,000 troops on the border.
Right on the other side of the 100,000 plus that Ukraine had amassed.
Yes.
In their own country.
In their own country,
and Russians were in their own country as well. Good job.
Yeah, but the difference was Ukraine is trying to control their own borders. Russia's trying to invade another country. Why would you try to equate these two things?
That presumes that it can rightfully be said to be their borders.
It is, because even Russia and every other sovereign state on the planet recognized it as their borders, of course.
Within the Budapest Memorandum in 1994, the Budapest Memorandum in 1994, which Russia agreed to, or 1991. Anyway, Russia agreed to Ukraine's borders, and I guess that was, that was like worth toilet paper.
That was under the presumption that the Russian speakers in Eastern Ukraine were going to be democratically represented.
No, that wasn't written into the recognition of anything. You can't make it conditional afterwards.
That is written in the foundation of, since 1991, the modern European Ukrainian state itself.
Show me where it's written that we can invade your country if we feel like you're not representing a certain group of people.
What's written.
Exactly. So don't even try to pretend, okay?
Ukrainian state's founding was premised on the idea that everyone was going to be given democratic representation, including the people in the East who spoke Russian and also the people who were ethnically Russian. I mean, this deal was necessary for a stable transition into the post-Soviet era.
No, it wasn't necessary for any stable transition. Do you think the USSR had a call in whether or not the Republic broke off from the USSR? The USSR fell apart. They had no control over it.
No, but on a multilateral level,
no, you're just making up words now.
Countries like Russia, Belarus, and others, and also the Western partners who we're dealing with, all did have to negotiate the terms under which this was going to be happening. And then finally, it would have been unthinkable at the time for the stability of the region. I mean, it was already unstable. You had places like Abkhazia and Ossetia and Transnistria with these disputed territories and populations. I mean, so it was unstable.
These aren't disputed. These are broken off by Russia.
Yeah.
No, they were not broken off by Russia.
Transnistria and Moldova, Georgia. Yeah, of course.
Not by Russia, but by the people living there.
Was that the brigade that they were planning to launch this formal invasion into the Donbass with was trained by U.S. and British instructors in Lviv or Lviv in accordance
we're
with
not
NATO training
it's
programs.
their territory.
So it was literally
Yeah,
they had begun supplying increased amounts of military artillery to Ukraine. Then they were planning this full-scale invasion with NATO trained Ukrainian brigades, and they were going to slaughter even more civilians in the Donbass, which is just another reason for Russia launching this protective mission, operation, invasion, whatever you call it, to stop this from happening, the continued slaughtering that is taking place for the past 8 years against the people of the Donbass.
And a blood and soil genocide is more like it. But I'm going to quote Sergei Lavrov.
You're literally a Nazi supporter. You literally are a Nazi supporter. Your arguments are null and void. You post memes about Stefan Bandera.
Fine.
Nazi propaganda. Kind of incredible that you would show your face. If I were you, I wouldn't show my face online.
So that my voice can also be included.
I'm going to close with a quote from Sergei Lavrov. We do within our borders what we want. We move our military. We do military maneuvers the way we choose, and no other country has any say in the matter. Sergei Lavrov. I think it applies to Ukraine as well.
Republics are disputed territory, and Ukraine signed the Minsk Agreement.
Disputed by whom?
By the people living there and the Ukrainian government. That's why there was a conflict. That's why there was the Minsk agreements, which the Ukrainian government voluntarily signed, and then later claimed they had signed at gunpoint, even though France and Germany were also parties to that agreement.
Anyway, legally to this day, no one really officially contests the Donetsk and Luhansk. Maybe Russia made statements to that effect, but as far as international agreements are concerned, Russia still considers that area to be Ukraine.
Yeah, but if international...
We can go to the Q&A if you want to, by the way, I'm done.
International agreements are not the sole factor in defining what constitutes.
Wait, I thought the law was super important. Now it's not.
There's sovereignty at the internal level and then sovereignty at the external level. Now,
it seems like
external sovereignty is determined by how mad your neighbors are, I guess.
Yeah.
No, internal sovereignty is determined by things like this. I mean, read the basic foundations of your liberalism. Your liberal thinkers talk about the social contract and the need for an agreement to be come to between the government and the people. Unless what? I mean, Thomas Jefferson, even he said that it is right and justified for a people to overthrow their government if they're not in a constitutional way.
People to overthrow their government, not for a foreign power to come in and take over your shit when there's conflict.
You yourself admitted that while Putin recognized the new government of Ukraine, it's the people in the eastern Ukraine who didn't. So it's not a foreign government who's imposing.
It's foreign troops that have been on the ground since 2013 in the Donbass.
That's the issue. 2013. I mean, that is your allegation.
Let's move into the next one. I hate to do this, guys, but just because we want to get you guys out of here by a decent time. Didymus says, by the way, folks, all of our guests are linked in the description. If you'd like to hear more about their views, you can by clicking on those links below. That includes in the podcast. We put our guest links in the description box there, too. Didymus says, Ukrainian nationalists did not get their anti-Semitism from the Nazis. They were doing pogroms during the Russian Civil War.
Yeah, but the nature of the anti-Semitism as voiced by people like Bandera during the 30s was qualitatively different than whatever historical European pogroms were happening before. So that's that's like saying there was pogroms in the medieval times in Ukraine. It doesn't speak to the unique character of the anti-Semitic violence during the Holocaust.
Sure, but Hitler's anti-Semitism and Nazi anti-Semitism was this weird, almost ultimate culmination of essentially hundreds of years of Christian anti-Jewish propaganda and traditional European.
Well, you could also say it was actually
I'll give you the last word, Infrared, and then we got it because the question was originally for you, and then we got to go to the next one because we're crunched on time. Infra, if you wanted to say something, like I said.
I was just going to say it was unique because it represented this post-Christian, pan-European, pagan idea that the Jewish people are foreigners to Europe and that they have to, and then just like the Slavs and just like other so-called subhuman races.
Wasn't anti-Semitism across Europe, all over Europe past World War I? It wasn't unique to one or two countries, right? But
yeah, but
anyway, next question anyway.
This one from Mitchell says, question for both sides. If you had the power and money to end this war, how would you do it?
Supply more heavy weapons to Ukraine until they crush the Russian army to the dust, so we can restore the borders of Ukraine that Russia originally agreed to, and then we can later on we can do fun stuff like break up the Russian Empire into its constituent states, so we will not have an imperialist power wage active war in Europe in 2022 again, in 21st century.
Jackson, you want to go? You can go.
Yeah, very, very simple. I mean, what AdamSomething just said is an effort to prolong the war. What I would do is I'd make the proposal, and hopefully Ukraine would have some sense of logic and agree to it and understand that if they don't, it's going to end up much worse for them. That you have to cede the regions that Russia has already established control over, including Donetsk, Lugansk, and Crimea, because Russia has the ability to continue advancing. Russia should also get Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, and Odessa, very historically significant town to them. Ukraine must remain neutral, meaning no NATO, stationing of artillery or personnel or training in the country anymore. And all official outed Nazi battalions and regiments and political leaders must appear before an international tribunal to try them for war crimes, if any, crimes of aggression that would be set before an international charter.
Also, in addition to all that, because I agree with all of that, since we're talking about power and money, I would also invest in the infrastructure and economic development of both Eastern and Western Ukraine, such that the source of Nazi extremism and anti-Russian sentiment, because they're blaming Russia for their own oligarchical zombie economy, I would have mutual economic development, which would lead to long-lasting peace in the region.
I would say that the agreement should be really simple. All of the territory should be returned to Ukraine. This includes the Donbass and it includes Crimea. Russia should probably even leave Sevastopol. I think they've lost any legitimate claim they've had to even running the base there. I think that Russia has shown that they are incapable of sustaining any long-term ground war. Their military discipline for a variety of reasons is just abysmal. And the further and longer that the war goes on, the more Russia's economy is going to suffer, and the more what little military honor they had will shrink and disappear into nothing.
Russia's economy is really being hit, huh?
Kind of.
Keep in mind that all of these guys that are laughing right now called that the war would be over in like a week. And now they're on like the most massive... Haas, you are literally on record. I can bring the clip up of you admitting
you're literally
they
today
didn't
right
control.
now saying that Russia's economy is
in a failure. Literally.
Hold on.
You guys, we got to move forward. I hate to do this.
But just to be clear about that, what I said was that, in my view, that things would not have gone as planned. Well, I was wrong about that.
Oh, they didn't.
But will you admit that you were wrong about the
this one?
Guys,
I hate to do this.
Will you admit that you were wrong about the ruble being totally worthless, even though not only has
their currency is having extreme trouble right now? But okay,
the ruble has reached historical.
Bloomberg just announced that the ruble is the top performing currency in the world.
And is that some crazy how that works, huh? Definitely true, right? Not only is the ruble the top performing not only is it the top performing currency in the world, Russia's military is one of the strongest standing armies in the world as well. Their military discipline is strict. The defense that they have for their armored units is super on point. Everything is going exactly.
It's incredible.
This one
coming incredible.
Next question.
We gotta go. Pedro HM, thanks very much. Says, why pro-Russian Ukrainians don't move to Russia? Why not offer asylum? It seems a simpler solution than annexing a whole country. It's $5 USD, by the way.
Because
that's an easy one. Who's that for?
Because it's their homeland, where they're living, where they're settled. During the Soviet Union, that was the bread and butter of their way of life.
How did they get there, by the way? It's a mystery.
It depends on who. Some were there.
How did ethnic Russians get to Ukraine, by the
That is like centuries
funny historical reasons.
So the real answer is Russia doesn't want those ethnic Ukrainians or the ethnic Russians from Ukraine to go back. They don't give a fuck about those people. Those people are only in Ukraine so that they can have a claim to the territory. Why would Russia want all the ethnic Russians back? Then they have less of a reason to do a civil war over there. Of course they want those people to remain over there.
Destiny, I know you're triggered, but no one can hear you or understand you when you talk that fast.
Do you not even know what the term Novorossiya is? They've been there for centuries. What are you talking about?
The reason why they should not have to flee to Russia is because that is their home, and they shouldn't have to leave it because a U.S. installed apparatus has decided that they want to harass, murder, and torture the civilians there because they don't like their leadership or their controlled leadership.
Okay. Next question, I think. We're done.
Mr. Monster says, it's not that I support Ukraine, it's that I support humanitarianism. Needless to say, a lot of innocent lives are being lost, though. Putin needs to stop.
Bro.
I mean, the most horrible thing is that like Russia went in saying that like, oh, we're about to protect the Russian-speaking Ukrainians from the little Russians from the evil Ukrainian Nazis. and essentially the overwhelming casualties of the war are Russian-speaking Ukrainians, because Russia is just going fucking scorched earth, as we've seen, like cruise missiles hit residential neighborhoods, artillery barrages, the TOS-1 thermobaric missiles hit housing areas. Massive civilian casualties in Mariupol. Currently, they're trying to cover up the civilian death toll. We see mass graves upon mass graves.
It just so happens that,
of course, Russians are saying that the Azov did it, but like in Ukraine, I mean, it's like someone takes a shit on the street, Russia will say it was Azov. So
it just so happens that YouTube censorship enforces all of these allegations you're saying. We're not even allowed to contest any of them.
Fucking Susan is at it again. God damn it.
Yeah. George Soros cocked you up.
Would you deny that? Because it's literally your view can't even be debated because it's enforced by YouTube censorship.
And yet here we are debating it right now.
Yeah.
No, we're not debating the various individual claims he just made about Russia's.
We literally can't talk about that, or else they'll demonetize us.
Yeah.
Demonetize. Wow.
They remove your super chat ability.
They also can issue a community
that is not
strike,
censorship.
which actually happened.
This one coming
That's not censorship. Saying if you talk about something, they're going to remove your ability to monetize your content.
They also issue
that is not censorship.
They also issue
that is not censorship. I'm sorry.
They've also issued suspensions over it as well.
If you want censorship, look at what Russia is doing with its journalists.
So
if you want censorship,
Russia doesn't claim to be...
No, last thing. If you want censorship, look at what Zelensky has done in banning all opposition parties and locking up, imprisoning, torturing, and killing.
Yeah, and look at
banning all
journalists who
opposition.
oppose Zelensky.
No,
look at what Zelensky has done.
Look at what the SBU death squad.
Look at the long list of names.
Considering that you're a big fan
CIA
of Bandera, I can't
and
imagine that you have a problem in the world with the SBU death squads.
And what about people like Jan Taxier?
Is it like the FEMA death camps or something? Like, is this some kind of like far-right conspiracy theory that you guys are like pushing?
You're the only conspiracy theorist here.
Oh, of course. Anyway, next question.
We have this one. Fernandez T says, here to support you, James. Thanks for your kind support, friend. Says, and by the way, 100% of super chats are going to go to charity today. That one is linked in the description box. They said... let's see. Thanks for your support, though. And Captain V says, for SB3, says, what's worse, a league of grind or this debate? This one coming in from Chris Morlock says, for Lestiny and Soydom, Ukraine, sorry is what it says. They say, Ukraine reformed, I love you guys. Ukraine reformed its National Guard in 2014. It had not existed since 2000. 7 battalions were instantiated from ultra-right groups. Source, Wall Street Journal, 2014.
I mean, what percentage of those people were Nazis? What percentage of them were like nationalist radicals? We don't know. This is just like, source, please.
Yeah,
but it's a good boogeyman.
How many
for
people in the
AfD
are Nazis?
Quite a lot of them. The AfD has 2 wings actually. Yes, absolutely. In West Germany, there's this based on like polling data within Germany. In West Germany, the AfD is generally trying to be like a more traditional right-wing populist party. In the East, it's full on blood and soil, and you can actually keep track of this through empirical data if you look it up.
Okay, well, I don't see the data confirming.
Look it up. I mean, Wikipedia.
Okay, well,
unless it's too suspicious for you.
I think this is a debate between people who know what they're talking about and Wikipedia.
You realize that Jackson literally linked me a Wikipedia article earlier to talk about the.
Yes, I use your own source to prove you wrong.
Thanks. Okay,
something
Donald
that
Trump.
you still haven't apologized for, but whenever you want to, I'm open to it. I might consider it.
Okay, Donald.
I might consider your apology.
All right, Donald.
What does Lestiny mean anyway? The analytical failure says if there were 10 votes short, that's how coups work.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Also said evidence of sniping.
I don't know. I want people to know, don't you understand that there's been elections in the U.S. where the margins were really small? Those margins matter.
True.
Chris Morlock says, for Adam, the 2014 referendum held in Crimea, Donetsk, Lugansk, 92% voted to join Russia. You claim the entire population of these areas, 7 million people, over 85% turnout, was at Russian gunpoint?
Sure. Do you think there was like an incentive to go out and vote? Actually, you know what? The better question.
So when the Ukrainian military is there,
the question was for me. In those areas, the Ukrainian military was not there. The Ukrainian military did not exist almost at that time. It had like 2,000-3,000 deployable troops, and that's it. So A better question, though, what would have happened if the people accidentally voted that they want to remain part of Ukraine? Like, do you think Russians would have just like packed up and it's like, okay, well, I guess we're the people, and we have just left Crimea and left the Donbass, the Donbass? Of course not. Obviously, the people, pro-Ukrainian people at that point. So these referendums happened later after the Russian takeover. So I mean, pro-Ukrainian people kind of saw the writing on the wall. There's Russian troops, abducting people, etc., and essentially threatening people, so like a massive chilling effect as well. So those people who are pro-Russian will stay. Those people who are pro-Ukrainian will most likely leave, as it happened in Crimea, for example. But actually, the Russian, some Russian organ, like I have this long video about Ukraine. Check it out. In that, I cover that this Russian state organization accidentally leaked the real Kremlin, like the real Crimea referendum results. And it was really close to 50-50, with much of the pro-Ukrainian population having already
I'm sure
fled.
that was real.
Oh, sure.
Adam,
look
Adam, I have a question for you. I have a question for Adam.
Oh, it's the Q&A section. Feel free.
I know. I have a question. Adam,
I'm sure it's going to be good faith.
It's very good faith. Adam, your videos prior to starting the Ukraine coverage, I thought they were pretty interesting. They're about infrastructure. They're about like transport. You seemed very obsessed with making sure that the trains were arriving on time and all the different areas you were covering and talking about. Very obsessed actually with trains arriving on time. So I'm curious, what led you from talking about trains arriving on time to go to defending Nazis like Stefan Bandera?
Holocaust, trains, Nazis, Auschwitz. We get the idea. Sure, I don't defend Nazis. In fact,
you defended Azov and Stefan Bandera.
I didn't defend Azov. I said I support the idea of throwing Azov at the Russians. That way you can stem the tide of imperialist aggression from Russia, and a bunch of Nazis die in the process. This is consequentialism.
Also,
I think
you claim that the presence of a military means it's at gunpoint. Have you ever
presence of a foreign military, dude? How can you be so dense?
Hold on. Okay. Have you ever considered that let's just assume you're right and the foreign military was there. You ever consider that the foreign military was only there because it was like overwhelmingly already known that the region had pro-Russian sentiment? Now, it wasn't formally
It doesn't matter. I don't know why you keep using this childish argument. Whether or not you have pro whatever sentiment or anti whatever sentiment doesn't give the right for a military to go into another country and hold new elections while they're occupying a country and stealing territory.
That's really misleading to say it's a foreign military when the people living there are Russian speakers, many of them ethnic Russians.
Militaries aren't decided by their language.
And they're even citizens. Many of them are even citizens of the Russian.
Wait. So
militaries aren't decided by where else other people have citizenship for. What?
Destiny. Like,
I know, but it's just misleading. You're making it seem like they would. That's grounds for the idea that they were coerced into voting the way they were.
It can be grounds for the idea that they're coerced.
Sure,
you had a military that took a country, that took part of a country away from another country, and then held new elections there with the people there. You're
right. It is possible for that to happen, but in context, it's clearly not the case.
Sure. Let me ask you this. One good faith question that Adam kind of posed earlier. Okay, if they would have voted to stay with Ukraine, do you think Russia would have packed their shit up and left?
I genuinely do. I think they would have been.
You're absolutely delusional. They
would have been
delusional.
I think they would have been so shocked that they had miscalisculated what the sentiment in that region. We're talking
miscalculated
about
like they have their entire war effort.
One last thing, because I didn't get to put my 2 cents in this round. One last thing.
I don't even think you have 2 cents to put together.
Destiny, it's incredible that you're putting this argument forward when literally Viktor Yanukovych was the one who said he didn't want to work with the EU, and as a result of that, the US actually cooed him out of political leadership.
You can say that as much as you want.
No, you're trying to act like, Russia.
There's no evidence for a coup. You can say it as much as you want, but there's no evidence that the US did anything.
Make the argument maybe Russia would have done it, but the US
you can't just repeat fake shit over and over again and expect it to become true.
Hold on.
So Crimea was brainwashed, but the Maidan people were not brainwashed by US.
The Maidan people were Ukrainians that were protesting for months.
They weren't brainwashed by Western media, but the people in Eastern Ukraine were brainwashed.
Yeah, they were brainwashed by Western media. They saw Western people living happy, democratic, economically prosperous lives, and they thought, wow, I want that.
Yeah, their lives have
that was the brainwashing that happened.
Their lives have gotten so much better under the Western sphere of influence. It's incredible how the state of Ukraine has just prospered.
Oh no! When the Russian oligarchs were running fucking everything in Ukraine, they were doing way better then. True, absolutely true.
Thing is
absolutely. It's not like Ukraine was one of the most corrupt countries in the fucking world, leading up to the
literally the
Maidan.
Western model of liberal democracy that gives rise to oligarchy historically in that region.
There we go. Now we're getting to the real Russian argument. These would actually be interesting debate if you guys weren't so fucking like slimy. If you want to have the real conversation of like the collapse of like Western liberalism and Russia seeing itself as like kind of instilling itself as kind of a new world, like multipolar thing in the East. That's the actual interesting conversation. The real reason why Russia's invading Ukraine. But you guys aren't honest enough to have that conversation.
Privatized and the free market decided this.
I'd be happy to have that conversation.
No, you're too you won't admit that that's the actual rationale of everything happening.
Hold on.
That's an interesting conversation, but you're not a good faith actor to have that conversation with.
I would be happy to have that conversation.
The entire reason for Putin's illiberal authoritarianism is because under liberal democracy, oligarchs reign free. That's why Putin has to be authoritarian to rein them in.
Must move forward. Gnarly Bonesful says, can Jackson Hinkle update us on the NATO commanders in Avastal?
No, I can't because the Russians have not publicized any of their names, but they have announced that there's going to be war criminal tribunals that involve NATO instructors in Mariupol that take place.
Wow. Imagine our shock.
This one coming in from Chris Morlock says, Destiny and Adam, how does it feel? Let's see. How does it feel to be losing the conflict? And I don't know if they mean that, if they're trying to suggest that
I think they mean the invasion.
Can't be talking about Ukraine losing the conflict because that's just...
They say, and looking at Novorossiya.
Yeah. Okay. So they do mean the conflict. No, I mean the Russian offensive in Severodonetsk is actually pretty embarrassing. They pulled up select Rosguardia troops, VDV, which is their paratroopers, also Wagner, and they pulled together 25 battalion tactical groups to assault Severodonetsk, and they were fucked by the Ukrainians. Holy shit! Ukrainians sort of feigned retreat to this industrial area to the west of the city, and then Russians came in, guns blazing. Ukrainians kind of just whoop, counterattack back, and this won't be a decisive win, but it's going to be an attrition thing.
You're delusional. They've literally lost every single major battle, and Zelensky just actually 2 days ago.
What are you talking about?
Zelensky just went out 2 days ago. Shut the fuck up. Zelensky went out 2 days ago and said that Ukraine is currently losing 100 troops a day. That is a staggering amount.
It's Cold War, but Russia lost Kiev, they lost Kharkiv. Ukraine is now counterattacking.
Russia did not lose Kharkiv. What was the first one you said?
So
what was the first one you said?
First they lost Kiev, and then they lost Kharkiv.
What battle ensued in Kiev? Show me the evidence.
Excuse me?
What battle ensued in Kiev?
Russia literally has retreated from even attempting to take Kiev. What are you talking about?
They couldn't even get to Kiev.
My question is, what battle ensued in Kiev?
There was no battle in Kiev because
they didn't even make it that far.
Because
I'm glad we figured that out. I'm glad we figured out.
They just tried to roll a couple tanks across the street and hope that Ukraine would surrender.
The obvious AdamSomething. There was
Jackson,
no
battle.
Russia.
No, that's great.
Honest question though. Wait, Jackson. Honest question. Who do you think you're convincing with this? There was no battle.
You just said there was no battle in Kiev. You just admitted it.
Sure, yeah, because Russians couldn't reach that far because Ukrainians stopped them, and then the Russians had to retreat.
If there was no battle in Kiev and Russia, they surrounded Mariupol with a 4-to-1 troop ratio, and in Kiev at best they had a 1 to 1.5 ratio of troops, meaning they had no intentions to actually invade the city. Do you think that potentially they were staging troops in Busha to try and offset Ukrainian troops in Kiev and make sure that they had to stay hunkered down there so they couldn't fight in the
This is the biggest fucking cope I've ever heard in my life.
Oh my god, dude.
That's called a feint strategy. Have you never heard of it?
It's consistent with the originally announced goals. They've never announced.
And in fact, Adam, last thing here, because this is important to what you said. You are literally arguing that in Severodonetsk right now, that the Ukrainians are operating a feint strategy, but you act like the Russians couldn't have potentially argued or carried out a feint strategy in Kiev, which is what they did.
It's the best feint ever, dude. Lose thousands of troops.
You can lose everywhere on the ground and then...
Got him, dude. Got him.
Unaccompanied armor getting destroyed by dudes with fucking rocket launchers on their shoulders. No infantry accompanying literally any of their troops anywhere.
Ukraine beats it.
Reddit combat footage. You can literally watch the videos. In what world are you losing tanks to one dude stepping out of a fucking garage with a fucking rocket launcher? Are you serious?
If they didn't fight in Kiev, and they were feinting to keep troops stationed in Kiev. And that's what they've continued to do through a troop presence in Belarus. What do you think that they would otherwise be doing there?
So yes, because the troops around Kiev are troops that are territorials mostly who would have stayed there anyway, and Russia knew this. So this was the whole thing. The mobile part of the Ukrainian army, which can be sort of can be sent east, like those were already sent east. The people who were around Kiev, most of them were territorials. So even if it was a feint, most of the troops would have stayed there anyway. So it was pointless, and it's even more ridiculous. But of course, it wasn't a thing.
Which is why the Russians left, and they still maintained the presence around Belarus. They left after a month of being there because they realized they didn't have to be there.
It's also consistent with Russia's original stated intentions.
This one coming in
Russia
from
never stated an intention to take Kiev.
Yajalma says, love watching, let's see. Love watching people like Destiny defending... They say next time he claims someone is, quote, dog whistling about a Nazi conspiracy theory, just remind him he supported genocidal Nazis against Slavic people.
Who?
Are you talking about NATO shit in Yugoslavia? I don't even know what that's a reference to, but okay.
This one coming in from Virgin CIA Rad Lib. Question for Destiny. Okay, it's just, folks, we're looking for meaningful questions here. Sorry, Steven. Okay, this one coming in from, you've got thick skin. You've been on the internet longer than I have. Okay, Bubblegum Gun says 80% of Ukraine government positions are held by Israel. I don't know what's...
Okay, true.
It's a full-on Nazi country, guys.
This one coming in from Pole says, I was agreeing with Jackson at the start, but then he made fun of the other... Let's see. He was being rude. Question for Adam. What are his thoughts about Turkey blocking Finland and Sweden from joining NATO?
As for being rude to Adam, I don't have a lot of sympathy for Nazi defenders. As for Turkey and NATO, I think
for
Turkey...
Adam on what he thinks. It says,
go for it.
Sure. So Turkey is now, Erdogan is a huge piece of shit, obviously, but like Turkey is now trying to eke out some sort of concession from NATO countries. They will not keep up the bloc forever, I think. But what they want to, basically Erdogan is trying to tie up some loose Kurdish ends with this because Sweden and Finland have been like friendly to Kurds, and plus they're trying to end the blockade of end the embargo on like Turkish arms purchases. It's like a realpolitik thing. I think it'll go away.
It's interesting how the constituent members of the Liberal Democratic Alliance, whether in the EU or NATO, increasingly assert their own sovereignty with these authoritarian strongmen. It's almost like liberal democracies failing the world over. Poland, Hungary, Turkey. I mean, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, Russia is definitely not controlled by an authoritarian strongman of all, for sure. What a great alternative.
Russia's not a liberal. No, Russia's not a liberal democracy.
Yeah, it's a far right ethno state. Yes.
It's not an ethno state. It's the opposite of an ethno state.
You're literally making ethnic arguments for Russia to invade other countries. If that's not an ethno state, what the fuck is?
No, it's not because
literally ethnic arguments. They're ethnic Russians, so they should be able to invade.
Ossetians are not ethnic Russians. Ossetians are not ethnic Russians.
Sure,
Russians.
How many times have you and Jackson said ethnic Russians in this debate to justify aggression in the east of Ukraine? Come on, dude.
Someone should make a compilation of that.
We're just doing it to illustrate the historical, cultural, and civilizational ties.
No, historical, culture, and civilization. You can talk about history, culture, and civilization. That's not what you're saying, though. You're saying ethnically Russian.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
I'll answer that.
In addition.
I'll answer that, Destiny. The only reason why...
No, I wasn't asking you, Jackson. I was asking...
Okay, well, I'm going to answer it anyways because
I seriously don't care. Who was the question for?
The only reason why...
Wait, is this even his question? Or?
The only reason why the ethnic Russian...
Oh, okay. I don't know why he's answering when I was talking about
Donbass has over...
answer it one way or another. I will answer.
Yeah, get to that. What's the next, James? What's the next question?
You made a statement, and I'm going to respond. The only reason why the ethnic Russian...
We have a lot of questions. I hate doing this.
Hey, he made a statement, and I want to respond.
Not to you. I was talking to Haas. I'm not talking to you, Jackson.
Give me like 30 seconds.
Do it, Jackson. Blood and soil. Do it.
I'll answer. The only reason why the ethnic Russian argument is important is because Ukraine is led by a group of anti-ethnic Russian sycophants that want to kill them all and rid them from Ukraine. It's not important to Russia. It's important to the Ukrainian fascists that want to get them out of their country, admittedly.
The fascists who have one seat out of 450. Got it.
The fascist that was the chair of the Verkhovna Rada, yes, Andriy Parubi.
This one,
who is now out of power, by the way, for like years.
Jay Grimes says,
next question.
Documentation of the extent of Nazi integration into the Ukraine National Guard includes extensive documentation by WAPO, Vice, and even CNN. Russian propaganda, I presume?
Sure. I mean, of course, there are far-right elements, as in with any security structures. And at that point, this is why I advocate seeking them at the Russians, right? Because at that point, you'll stop the imperialist onslaught and you'll end up with less Nazis in the end.
That's also what the
win-win.
That's also what the British intelligence wanted to do with Hitler against the Soviets. So congratulations for re-enabling fascism and Nazism historically.
Yeah, good thing.
The only people re-enabling it would be Russia that's attacking into the country then. And Beletsky left when the Azov Battalion was assumed in 2014 into the military. It's not like they kept their they have this official far right leadership or whatever. You guys can keep going to try to find historically.
He's the commander of the Azov Battalion.
No, he was. He left in 2014 when they were assumed into the military.
You can look even at the Kiev Independent. They still quote him as the commander of the Azov Battalion.
The current commander is like Prokopensky or some shit. It's not. Beletsky left when they were assumed into the military.
He literally was in Mariupol.
I don't know where he is. I don't really care, but I know that the current leader of the Azov. I can look it up.
The Kiev Independent literally quoted him as such when he made the claim that there was a chemical attack.
The current commander is Denis Prokopenko as of 2017 to now, and Beletsky left in 2014. I can quote your own Wikipedia you since you like that as a source so much. Here you go. You can read the side for everybody. There you go. What's the next question?
This one coming in from Chris Morlock says for Adam, did Russia send 50,000 troops to take Kiev, a city of 3.5 million? It pulled 5 AFU battalions off the Donbass line and allowed for the current situation. 95% of Lugansk under Russian control.
Can you repeat that question, the first part especially?
Yep, they said, did Russia send 50,000 troops to Kiev, a city of 3.5 million?
Oh, yeah, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so yes, because the Russian plan originally was that the Kiev regime, the Nazi junta or whatever, will collapse, and the Ukrainian troops will lay down their arms in the face of the overwhelming Russian superiority, which of course didn't happen.
You have evidence?
In the first, sure, listen to Vladimir Putin, dude. And also in the first few days of the war, we saw Russians essentially charging into Kiev, just like small disparate operations. Also in Ukrainian uniforms, which is a war crime, by the way. But they got executed. There were multiple attempts at Zelensky's life. So basically, these idiots imagined that the Ukrainian army will just disperse and they're just gonna roll into the city. And
do you have evidence that's their plan?
Yes, and have a victory parade on the 9th of May. Actually, funny thing is, in many cars, in many vehicles of the Russians, they found these like parade uniforms. Like these idiots actually thought that they're gonna have the 9th of May parade on like Kreshchatyk.
That sounds like something completely.
Whoa, hey, dude! This question was for me. Feel free to answer your question if you get one. So anyway, this was the plan. It was horribly misguided. They had to revise it like 8 times, and now it looks like the Russian army has finally culminated in Severodonetsk, a town of 100,000, which is just embarrassing. So we'll from now on, I think we'll be seeing more and more Ukrainian.
Sounds like they were targeting strategic.
Whoa! Hey, I'm not done. And after that, we'll be seeing more and more Ukrainian harassment, counterattacks, and Russian attrition. And we'll see. Hopefully, the Russian Empire will collapse.
This one.
I'm just curious for Jackson and Haas, give you guys a chance to talk. Can you explain what was the Russian strategy behind sending like so many like unaccompanied APCs and unaccompanied tanks to just get like solo destroyed by people with rocket launchers? What was the strategy there? For the
plus the 30-mile truck convoy. Don't forget that.
Yeah, can you explain what the military strategy was?
I'll first say, Destiny, you are right about Beletsky no longer being commander, but I incorrectly quoted the Kiev Independent, who on April 11th said that he was Azov's leader, and they've been known to lie throughout this war, so I incorrectly quoted them. I quoted them correctly, but they incorrectly reported, I guess is a better way of saying it. As to why Russian military tanks were blown the hell up, I mean, they lost a lot of military personnel. There was multiple times in which Ukrainians, when Russians were trying to enter certain cities, they just blew entire platoons and units up. They slaughtered them. But overall, the military strategy of Russia has been a flow of water approach, where they go where they can go, and if they get stopped by Ukrainians, they don't continue pushing through into the city.
That's not how war works.
Hey, I let you talk.
It's a special operation.
Let him talk.
It's a very special operation.
This is very funny. Go ahead.
Yeah, so there was multiple attempts where they tried to go into certain cities and they were blown up and they were slaughtered by the Ukrainians. That's a true thing.
There's even instances where they went into cities. So go ahead, finish.
Yeah, but the overall military strategy has proved to be effective because, again, they've controlled far more land than Ukraine has been able to protect. I mean, they've lost virtually every single battle. There's been a few small battles in which Ukraine has won, but the overall large battles, such as in Mariupol, such as in Popasnia, they've lost all these major battles thus far. They've lost Severodonetsk almost entirely. According to Ukrainian officials, they've lost 80% of it. They've already started taking small villages outside Lysychansk, where they're about to encircle 16,000 Ukrainian troops. So, yeah, they may have lost
can I ask a question?
Their strategy has been very effective.
Sure. So when you say effective,
routed.
So Russia has said that they have lost, what is this, almost 24,000 people?
What? Show me the evidence. What is your data for that?
Okay, hold on. Let me check. I'm trying to look up the casualties of the Russia-Ukraine war.
Just to be clear,
these are usually the
oftentimes it's reported that
open source intelligence.
Oftentimes it's reported that Russia's retreating because of this huge counterattack. Russian soldiers have even pulled back, and tanks. They've even pulled back, at the slightest whiff of the most minimal resistance.
Damn, what
that doesn't even
Betas, huh?
That doesn't even kill anyone.
Second strongest army.
And the reason they do that isn't because they're scared of these people and that they're going to lose to them, because they're trying to minimize casualties. So they'll pull back.
Oh, sure.
And usually encircle the place for a more long-term strategy. I mean, they could have stormed Azovstal, and they didn't.
So how come they didn't circle Kiev?
Because it wasn't their strategy to take Kiev at that time.
I thought encirclement was anyway. So the real reason for anyone interested is attrition. So if you pull in like guns blazing, no combined arms, just send in the heavy columns, Ukrainians will blow the fuck up with mobile infantry.
It's because they want to minimize casualties.
Yeah,
because even when Ukrainians have not
just like Mariupol is a fucking ruin. Anyway, so. This is called attrition. So basically, you don't defeat an army head on. You essentially it's like a death by the thousand cuts.
Which is a war of attrition.
Yes, which is what happened in Kiev and Kharkiv. Russians had to pull back because it was unsustainable. Mega cope.
It is without a doubt a war of attrition. Kiev was an example of a feint strategy, but yes, this is a war of attrition, and it's proving quite successful for the Russians.
I mean, the Russians. They could have They could have taken many places, many villages, and they decided not to because they want to minimize casualties on both sides.
I don't understand how you, or I understand it.
Okay.
I'm curious. I'm just curious. What would success look like to you in a month? Because if I asked you guys a few months ago, you would have said that obviously they're going to be controlling Kiev.
I don't have the Russian military playbook.
Russia has not been transparent about. I've made the mistake of trying to infer and speculate about what their plan is. It's not disclosed to the public. It's only disclosed to the actual people in charge of the operation.
But
Hinkle, I'm not going to try and speculate on what their timetable is or any of that kind of stuff.
I will make a guess.
Jackson, really quick.
He asked me a question. I want to respond.
Oh, sure. Okay,
I'll make a guess. I wouldn't be surprised if Russia doesn't end the operation until they get Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, and Odessa.
Okay, so Jackson, don't feel just one sentence. Jackson, don't feel too bad if you don't know.
Try to get through this sentence without stuttering. Go for it.
Oh, sure. That Jackson charisma, huh? No, just don't feel too bad if you don't have the Russian military playbook because
job.
Russia doesn't have it either.
We got to give him a chance to actually.
Bro, how many languages do you speak, Jackson? Wait, what the fuck? It's this guy's ESL debating you, and you're making fun of him for stuttering? Are you actually retarded? Yeah, anytime somebody makes fun of a foreign language, you should just speak in your fucking native language. You know, the other guy can't
just call me retarded. That
unironically, yes. Like, how can you make fun of an ESL guy for stuttering in English?
Well, I have to hand it to.
Hold on. To be fair,
I think it's only fair that
you asked a question.
I need a safe space.
It's only fair that he knows English because he's trying to use our country to fight his battles.
It has nothing. I'm just saying that of all the things you can make fun of somebody for, you can't make fun of a multilingual person for being not quite as quick with your own language. That's the dumbest thing in the world. Make fun of somebody for.
I want to give
our
Jackson.
military.
Okay, our sons and daughters.
Jackson,
okay,
dude.
He should use our language
to respond without being interrupted.
Oh, that's fine. I think we can go on.
That is it. I promise our guests we're going to get them out of here at a decent time. So, folks.
Can I ask one more question? Then they can respond. Okay, I'm giving them the last word.
Short and pithy question.
Very short. Do you think in 3 months will Russia control more or less territory than it does right now in Ukraine?
Without a doubt, more.
Okay.
Without a doubt. In fact, I think they'll control more by the end of this week.
Yeah. Finally, one last thing. I just wanted to end it on this. We couldn't get Adam in on this one, so original plan is on. That was the tweet Modern Day Debate put out in public. That's it.
The what? Wait, which tweet?
March 2nd, 2022, saying
Oh, okay.
that
So
we're the one
James,
who
James,
bring
did
on.
they cancel or did I cancel the previous one?
Hold on, I've got it right here. Since you guys, let's
You
see.
tweeted it on Twitter.
So
This is what I
who-
said because someone happened to like it during the debate. I said, to clarify, tomorrow's event with Omni Liberals friend Infrahaz and Jackson Hinkle is still on. I asked Dylan Burns if AdamSomething could take Dylan's place, and Dylan was open to it because he's burning the wick at both ends. We couldn't get Adam in on this one. In other words, it wasn't that he had already committed and then backed out. He just said it wasn't going to fit with his schedule. So original plan is on,
So it wasn't us.
Well, I don't think anybody
Thank you.
backed out, if I remember.
Wait, didn't we have an original debate set up with the four of us, and then those two backed
Don't you
out?
think it's incredible though that
No,
on the
Azov
on the
something
second- on the
was
second
no
of
evidence on
March-
the YouTube audience and claiming that we backed out when it was in fact a scheduling error on his own part?
Jackson,
Hold on, James.
So
Can you
Adam,
tell
did
me,
you lie?
James? Was there
It's really
was there an
incredible.
original debate between all four of
He's
us
a
that they
Nazi
backed out on?
supporter and
wait,
he's a
yeah,
massive
there
liar.
was
Hey,
kind
let
of.
James.
So
Yeah, James.
There was.
Yeah.
I remember it was something that I think I said. I came to Jackson.
Second of March.
I came to
Second of March
Jackson
email.
and Haas, you guys, and I said, could it be Destiny and Adam? And then I think this is when Infrared had a hate boner for Dylan. Infrared said, no, Dylan has to be in it. He said, Dylan can't be a co-host. I
Yes.
reject that debate. And
Oh, okay.
No. All I said yes to the debate with AdamSomething, no to Dylan as a. Why would Dylan co-host? He's not
Exactly.
debating.
Okay, that's
How would
fine.
he get
But
in
you
the
guys, so you had a reason, but you did back out of the first debate. That's all we want.
We
No,
didn't.
but then,
Yeah, okay.
but
But
then
modern
Adam
day
was,
debate said
Adam
we
was
couldn't
ready
get
to
Adam.
debate. Adam was ready to debate, and then he
Yeah.
said he couldn't because of a scheduling conflict.
Yeah.
Well, no, that sounds like a second debate that was never agreed on.
No, it
How's that
doesn't.
a second debate if we just said we didn't want Dylan Burns to be the co-host?
Yeah. Why
I was
would we
always open to
co-host?
reschedule.
Debate, we
A
just said we
co-host
didn't
is a
want
host
Dylan
is
to be
supposed to be
co-host.
neutral. Why would we want Dylan Burns?
I really
to
don't think anybody backed out. I want to say, folks, all of our guests are linked in the description. If you'd like to learn more about their views, we highly encourage you. We really do appreciate our guests, and I will put up that charity receipt as 100% of the super chats from tonight's debate will be going to the Domestic Action Center. And so, thank you very much for your support. That receipt for that donation will be up on the social tab on our YouTube channel within the next 48 hours. Thank you to our guests, though. It's been a true pleasure to have you guys.
Thank you. It's been a good debate.
With that,
Oh,
I'll be
very
back in
good.
just a moment with a post-credit scene letting you know about upcoming debates. With that, stick around. Thanks so much, folks.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Yeah. I'm not dying. Get out of here. Not dying. We're dancing in the street. There's nothing left to eat. We're on our winning streak. Going out in
Ladies and gentlemen, want to say thanks so much for being with us. We are thrilled to have you here, and thanks so much for your support. As this is a charity stream, we're excited about a good cause, namely the Domestic Abuse Action Center is a great charity. They do a fantastic job with the funds that they get. They have a great charity watchdog rating because we really do. We try to be very careful about what charities we give to when we do these charity events. And they have a great rating, namely suggesting that they actually do give, or you could say they put the funds toward what they say they're actually doing with them, namely helping people that have been victims of domestic violence. And so that is something that we can say we all agree on that. Whether you be more Republican, more Democrat, you name it, Christian, atheist, gay, straight, black, white, everybody agrees that is a good thing. Trump supporter, Biden backer, like we're all happy to help those who are less fortunate. And so we do want to say, we hope you feel welcome no matter what walk of life you were from. We appreciate the guests. I know that the live chat is sometimes wild, and sometimes you're kind of like, hey, the mods are being too tough on us. They won't let me say this, or they won't let me say that. And we always, for one thing, we follow YouTube terms of service, because if somebody's saying something that YouTube would consider, they would say it falls under the grounds of hate speech, something like that, where it's picking on a certain race or something. We can't allow that. Both ethically speaking, we don't like it, but also if we were to, and some people are like, no, be 100% full on free speech, let people say anything they want, and it's like, well, like, doesn't even make sense. It would be thwarting our own purpose because YouTube allows us to grow. In fact, YouTube markets, like YouTube promotes us by showing our debates, recommending them. YouTube does give us huge promotion. A lot of our debates they get crazy impression numbers. And so in other words, YouTube is recommending our videos a lot. We're thankful for that. And so, we actually do try to follow terms of service because it's just rational. But the other thing is, we hope that you do enjoy people from all walks of life, that you are friends with people who you may disagree with people who are atheist, Christian, Muslim, you name it, as well as different demographics, like whether they be straight, gay, and everything else. I would name all the demographics. We'd be here all night. But I want to say we do appreciate our guests. I can't stay here long. I've got to run like right now. But I want to say we do indeed have some upcoming debates I want to tell you about. In particular, if you have not seen this one. By the way, our guests are linked in the description. If you want to hear more about their views, you certainly can by clicking on those links below. What are you waiting for? And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button as we have many more juicy debates coming up. At the bottom right of your screen, for example, Vosh versus Dr. Bogardus from Pepperdine University. You don't want to miss this one. That's next week. We're really excited about it. I think it's going to be a great discussion, even though it's a controversial topic. That's true, but nonetheless, I'm telling you, it's going to be a really good one. You don't want to miss that. Also, tomorrow, though, you don't want to miss this one either. Theist versus atheist. Intelligent design debate. Intelligent design is starting to pop back up in terms of people being interested in that, in terms of debating it. So that should be a fun one as well. That's tomorrow night. You don't want to miss it. Amy will be moderating that one. I'll be back for the Vosh debate, which is on Wednesday. And so you guys, I love doing this. We want to say thanks for all your support. You guys really do support this channel a ton. You have no idea how much it helps. Like, hitting that like button helps as well, for real, no joke. It does actually boost us in the algorithm. And so we really do appreciate all of your guys' support. Want to say hello to you there in the old live chat, as I've got to run in about 8 seconds. Pedro HM, good to see you. El Solmo, good to see you again. Prisoner X, glad you are with us, as well as Jeremy Nolan, glad you're here. Fabula M24 McHaffey, thanks for being with us, as well as John S, glad to have you here. And Plushies DX, thanks for dropping in. General Balzac, good to see you again, as well as ERON. Is it pronounced Aaron? Glad you're here. Slicer John 189, thanks so much. And we'll end with their chat. They said, take care, everyone. Stay safe. And we indeed wish that you will take care and stay safe. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks for your guys' support. Sorry I got to run. I usually like to hang out longer in these post-credits debates scenes, but it's just a little bit of a time crunch. So love you guys. Thanks for all of your support. We're excited to see you at the next one as we pursue the passion, the vision that we have, which is to provide a level playing field so that everybody can make their case on a neutral platform. That is Modern Day Debate. That's our goal. That's our vision. That's what we're determined to do, and we're excited about it. So join us as we are only just beginning. Thanks so much, everybody, and we'll see you at the next one.